Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind. And now, the Freedom Reporters.
Good evening, Maverick family. Good evening, new viewers. The world is watching Maverick News, and we appreciate you guys stopping by tonight to join us. And when I say us, I mean myself, and Lori will be along shortly to join this broadcast. We have a special guest again joining us for a second time, Kevin Michelizzi. He's a cyber security expert, specialist, journalist, political analyst living in Russia right now. He's going to give us the lay of the land, an assessment of what things are like in Russia tonight, live, after all of this, whatever you want to call it, rebellion, mutiny, strange development, quirky stuff, the Wagner, convoy to the Russian capital that kind of fizzled out. Anyway, he's going to talk about that. We'll also, I'm sure, dive into international politics, and we'll be talking about this crazy situation in France where the country is literally burning, not just forests, but like cities. Some people think that this is actually some sort of almost like it looks to me almost like a color revolution, some sort of it's probably closer to a coup than what we saw in Russia. And that looked like a coup for a while, but then it turned out to be, I don't know what it was. Maybe Kevin can shed more light on it when he joins us a little later in the broadcast. We'll look at what's happening in Ottawa today on this Canada Day, July 1st. A lot of attention focused on the nation's capital in Canada, not just Canadians looking, but the whole world, really. And in part because of what we talked about last night with Adrian the Realist, who had some supporters there ready to raise his swastika flag on Parliament Hill. We'll talk a little bit about that. What else do we have? We have lots of video out of France tonight, where they've arrested over 1,300 people, by the way, and what has turned out to be a fourth night of protests there. Some people saying it's like their George Floyd moment, but it seems to be something bigger than that. And what we're going to do right now, actually, well, maybe in a minute. No, that's okay. Hang on. I'm just a little confused here, but I've got things back on track. So yeah, we'll take you to the capital of Canada, talk about what's been happening up there. And I know you don't want to hear from him, but we will run a little clip from the Prime Minister. He did get up on stage and talk. That's his job. Well, part of his job anyway. Our lead story tonight, the one in the thumbnail and the headline of the program, there's irony here, and it's sad irony, but the owner of Vancouver's very controversial The Drugs Store, and I apologize, the one thumbnail that we had, which did not properly update, it's missing an S on the end of drug, but it's The Drugs Store. He's died. He's passed away from a drug overdose. This is the guy who set up his own, like it's literally a drug store where they sell hard drugs, illicit drugs in Vancouver, British Columbia. We have that story tonight. That's kind of it in a nutshell. And then fast forward a couple of hours from now, 8 o'clock. And we're going to keep this whole broadcast rolling. At 8 p.m., we switch over to the premiere episode. Well, it's actually the fifth episode of this series that Lori has put together. It's called Strange Bedfellows. It is a political show. And I'm sure everyone knows that phrase. Politics makes strange bedfellows. Well, she has a strange bedfellow tonight in the form of Mega MAGA Man, the ultimate Donald Trump fan. And I can say that Lori is probably the biggest Robert F. Kennedy Jr. fan that I know. Maybe the biggest booster of RFK Jr. today. I don't know. She's a pretty big one. And we have a guy he's got all the Trump paraphernalia. He's got a Trump bathroom. He's got all the collectibles, the flags, the clothes. He's like, I call him Mega MAGA Man. And he was supposed to be on the show about 2 weeks ago, and that didn't quite work out. 2 weeks? Yeah, approximately. Anyway, he is going to be here tonight at 8 p.m., and we'll roll right into the first Maverick News Network episode of Strange Bedfellows. So that'll be an interesting show for you, because you're going to have a Trumper and a RFK Jr. person, and they're going to go head to head. And I think it's going to be fun. And there will probably be a lot of humor injected into that too. So looking forward to that. Don't go away. When we come back, we'll get into our lead story, the death of Vancouver's the drugs store owner.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, so first up tonight, before we get to the Canada Day stuff, I'm old, so I'm pretty conservative, I guess, and maybe a little curmudgeon-y, but maybe I'm just a little stuck in my ways. But I've had a hard time accepting this new approach to dealing with hard drugs, especially, the way they're doing it out in British Columbia, where they have decriminalized hard drugs, but they have not legalized the sale of hard drugs. Now, there was a man who opened the first store in Canada openly selling heroin, cocaine, meth, and MDMA. Jerry Martin had a brother who passed away from a drug overdose, as I understand it. And his goal was to open this place he calls the drugs store in Vancouver, selling hard drugs that are I guess, from reliable sources, drugs that are, not cut with other ingredients, that they're clean, that they aren't contaminated. And also, his objective, I guess, was to sell these drugs, or so he says, in a controlled way so that people didn't get too much and maybe help people who are addicted avoid overdosing. So I don't know what the right word is to use here to be sensitive about this. Jerry Martin has now died of an overdose. He originally survived the overdose, but he was taken to hospital. He was unresponsive in hospital, and then his family eventually decided to take him off life support. His wife, Krista Thomas, was there to make that decision. Martin, 51 years old, believed that people were self-medicating their trauma, and so long as they were doing that, they needed a safe supply to do it. That's what his wife said. That was his objective in opening the drugs store. So apparently, Martin overdosed on fentanyl. And we all know that fentanyl is an extremely powerful, a newer drug. And it is a drug that has taken far too many lives. So he opened the drugstore in May. It was a bricks and mortar shop. It was opened, right out in like any other business. But it didn't take long for police to come and arrest him, because even though hard drugs have been decriminalized, selling hard drugs is something police still were frowning upon, and the state, so the government. So yeah, he was open. He was arrested within 24 hours of opening that store, which was located on Vancouver's downtown east side. And, when he opened that store, he was making international headlines, which is why I'm really drawing attention to this evening. And I have to say thank you to Leo as well, who alerted us here at Maverick News to the death of Mr. Martin. Leo informed me early this morning. He became aware of it because Leo is always dialed in, very connected, always aware of what is going on. He has some friends out in Vancouver, and he connected me with someone out there, and we became aware early this morning. And so I did post to social media to break that news. And I think we were, if not the first, one of the first in the world, North America, Canada, certainly, to report this news. And we're one of the first still even tonight, because this story still has not received very much attention. And yet I think it deserves more attention, because Mr. Martin certainly generated a lot of media attention when he first opened his store, as I say. So much so, in fact, that here's an example of a CTV story that was picked up by the Young Turks online and was referencing Vice, all in the space of just a couple of minutes in this report.
Own store, not to sell groceries or clothing, but hard drugs. He's well aware it's a risky move, but hopes his shop will reduce the number of people dying of overdoses.
Jerry Martin is a former drug addict. Now sober, he wants to open up his own brick and mortar shop to sell hard drugs, including heroin, cocaine, and meth.
It takes the extreme to get things done sometimes.
He recently lost his brother due to overdose and says there's a need to provide a safe supply.
A lot of these people, in fact, all of them, they have to take a risk every day where they go get their drugs. They're either going to get something that isn't clean or safe, or they can put themselves in a dangerous situation. There's a lot of predators out there that'll get girls to do things for their drugs, whether they get the money or not, and they'll put them in a situation. And I don't think it's very comfortable for anyone. So they can come in there and not have to worry about that.
Picked up by the Young Turks. And you'll see commentary here.
There's someone trying to start a new business. Hey, it's capitalism, bro. There's a Vancouver man who opened his own drug selling store. right in front of everyone, because he was trying to make sure that people get the right drugs clean and safe, because, you know, he's had his past with it. But by the way, police already shut him down 24 hours after he opened up that store for drug trafficking. Vice News caught up with him. His name is Jerry Martin, and here he is outside of that store. Sorry, I don't want to laugh at this, but he was serious, which, you know what, I gotta give him props. This is what his sign's saying, in case you guys can't see it. Adults only, 18 plus. ID is required. It's very safe and very double-checked location here. Possession limit, 2.5 grams per drug, per purchase, per person. No exceptions, Dara. By the way, if you guys couldn't see that other sign on the ground next to him, you guys can get different leveling prices for cocaine, crack cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and I believe at the bottom it got cut off as MDMA. Bro, you can get all your stuff that you need, move on, have no worry about the way these street drugs just may be laced, may not be what you're looking for, or could be laced with, you know, what everyone's talking about here, all that fentanyl. Dara, what are your thoughts here? I mean, is it something that maybe...
Well, hang on a second here. I have to roll this back because listen to what she says. Listen to this. Hang on. I don't know about this.
Can catch on?
I mean, I admire his entrepreneurship. He's got, you know, he's driven and self-motivated.
Yeah.
I do question where he's getting the drugs from. In the first, I mean, I admire that he's testing them to make sure they're safe, but then I want to know how he's testing them. And like, there's a lot of questions there. That
she admires the entrepreneurship. I don't know. Okay, man. I just, you know, this is like, this is beyond sad. You have a drug addict who loses a brother to an overdose. Government decriminalizes hard drugs, making it easier, I think even more attractive for people to use them, paving the way to even more drug use in society. This guy, who's already a recovering drug addict, opens the drugs store, which is, in my mind, sort of like an alcoholic opening a bar, and then would be around the booze all the time. Now this guy's in a store surrounded by every imaginable kind of drug there is. Availability 24/7. Concerned about fentanyl and contamination of fentanyl or with any of these other drugs. And now tonight, Jerry Martin dead. Drug overdose. Fentanyl himself. This isn't irony. This is just tragedy. And I think it's a statement about where our society has descended to. It's I'm almost speechless because of the stupidity involved in this story. This is just complete, absolute stupidity. Failure of government, failure of social service agencies, failure of the courts, failure of every support mechanism that is supposed to be in place for drug addicts, failure of people themselves, failure of the education system, just failure after failure after failure, which they double down on and expand upon until you get to this point where you've actually got a guy who opened a store to sell illicit drugs because he thought he was doing the right thing, only to end up killing himself inadvertently, apparently, by overdosing on the product that he was selling to other people to prevent them from overdosing or getting drugs that were contaminated and might poison them, essentially. The madness of this. And to be reporting on this on Canada Day seems far too appropriate. It's just one more, and I guess you used the word ironic, statement. Another stain, really, on Canada. on this Canada Day. I feel bad for him. I feel sad for his family. I feel sad for his wife. And yet at the same time, I in my view, people who end up there, it's because of choices they've made too. So people have to learn to take responsibility, personal responsibility for their actions. And when they make bad choices, sometimes they get bad outcomes, bad consequences. But at the same time, I think the messages that are sent to people today with regard to the use of drugs and the way they behave in general, I think it's all very negative. We've lost our moral compass. Of that, I am sure. Morality. Where do you find the path to what is right versus what is wrong today? When God has been taken out of the equation, when up is down and down is up and black is white and white is black, because we have a government that essentially has replaced the church. The state has replaced the church. And they dictate now what is morality, where the virtuous things to get involved with are things like drag queen story time and climate change activism. These are the new religions. It is the new religion. Identity politics, neoliberal wokeism, where drug use, hard drug use, is viewed as being okay. And that you're just a victim if you become addicted. But as far as I'm concerned, our attitude toward it as a society has just devolved. I'm actually disgusted with what I see out there. I do feel for him. He was trapped. And, he was looking for a way out, not just for himself, but for other people, right? He was, I think, trying to help people, but at the same time, profit from it. It leaves me feeling almost helpless, almost hopeless. I don't know what else to say. I'll be right back.
Fighting the Great Reset by leading the Great Resistance. Maverick News. The antivirus programs for your mind.
Yeah, these hard drugs, like many things in our society, government sanctioned, they're a trap. People talk about freedom, and you would think that because I'm so freedom oriented that I would sit here and say, hey, do whatever you want, man. Like if you want to do heroin, just go do heroin. You should be free to do it. But I don't think that way. Not when it comes to drugs. Because drugs are addictive. And because they are addictive, so addictive, I view them as a trap. They don't represent freedom. By making them widely available to people, by failing to discourage their use, I think you open the door to the trap. You could argue that people should be free to make the choice to use these drugs that are highly addictive and extremely harmful, physically, emotionally, and even socially. But I say no, because once you're addicted, you're trapped. You become a slave to the drug and to the people or persons selling you the drugs. It enslaves you. It destroys your life. That's not freedom. So I'm not in favor of decriminalizing drugs or legalizing them, not drugs like that. And I'm not in favor of opening stores to sell them to people, and I'm not in favor of safe injection sites. I am in favor of programs to help people get off those drugs and rehabilitate. But the programs we have right now are clearly not working. That's my personal opinion on it. Other people will disagree, and that is fine. And I'm sure that this is a problem that is not going to go away. It will be with us for a long time. Now, yesterday, we had Adrian the Realist on talking about his, well, he calls it a Thunderbird flag. It's a flag that he designed, I guess. It has a swastika on it. I don't like it. That's my opinion. Again, he says it's a First Nations symbol that they are reclaiming, or he wants to reclaim. I acknowledge that. But it was also used by the Nazis in World War II. And it has a very dark history in that regard. And while those who advocate or support his decision to promote the use of this Native American flag with a swastika on it, and the plan was to raise this flag on Parliament Hill today during Canada Day. Well, those who support it say that it's reclaiming Native heritage. I say it is selective history. And it's dangerous selective history because it is normalizing the use of the swastika. And the decision to promote the use of this swastika on this flag involves a conscious decision to simply ignore the use of the swastika during World War II by the Nazis themselves. When people see that, they certainly associate it with Nazi Germany today. And while, yes, people maybe should be more aware of the use of the swastika by other cultures throughout history, especially maybe First Nations here in Canada, Native American, Indigenous people across North America or Turtle Island. Maybe we should be more aware of our history, of Native American history, of the use of the swastika. But it doesn't eliminate, just because it was used in that way in the past doesn't mean that that's not an excuse for ignoring the way it was used by the Nazis. And that is today the most prominent memory that the public has of that symbol, and it is very divisive. It is dark. And by using it, normalizing its use, and telling people that it has positive energy behind it in that way, associating it in that way with people, it muddies the waters around what happened during World War II and the Holocaust. And in my conversation with Adrian last night, I mean, he downplayed the Holocaust and openly acknowledged that he takes issue with Jewish people. You can watch the whole interview. I don't need to tell you again exactly what he said, but you have to watch the whole thing. and where a lot of it, in order to get to the part where he talks about the Jews. I think the use of that symbol is extremely dangerous. And so, of course, I'm opposed to it. I will say, though, that I am a big free speech advocate, and I will defend his right to, or it should be his right. It isn't his right, but it should be his right to express himself with that symbol on a flag if he chooses to, as other people should be allowed to. But police called and told him that 4 different police agencies actually called and spoke to Adrian and said that if any of his supporters brought those flags onto Parliament Hill today, they would be confiscated and potentially arrests would be made. So we've been looking to see what happened up there on Parliament Hill today during the Canada Day celebrations. And what we saw was stuff like this. Hang on, let me just get this video rolling up. This is AC Media.
Welcome to Ottawa. Lines hundreds deep, barely anyone on the hill. Lines both directions, hundreds deep, as they frisk kids. Happy Canada Day.
So that was going on like all day. And we were told, we heard the conversation that that Adrian recorded and then released on, his own decision, of a police officer from Ottawa speaking to him, telling him that his supporters would be going through those checkpoints and they would detect the flags and confiscate them if they were found. And as I say, it was potentially running into some sort of a confrontation up there today. So what happened? Don't know. Adrian said in that conversation that they had as many as 50 flags that would be flown on Parliament Hill today. But as I was watching all day, I did not see any indication of it. So if it happened someplace where it was not seen, not publicized so far. Maybe there's video out there someplace. If anyone has seen it, send it over. I haven't seen anything today to indicate that those flags were raised. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to try to contact Adrian during the course of this broadcast tonight to see if maybe he can fill us in on what happened, because of course a lot of people are very interested, especially after we spent so much time discussing this last night. In the past, like back during the winter when they had that big thing going on out in Winnipeg, he was promising to fly that flag outside the Winnipeg legislature, and I guess they did that, but when they went down, I think there were only about 4 people there, and they did a little thing, but it wasn't very large at all. It was just a small thing that they got on video. And so if they went there today, I would say that those flags were probably taken quickly at those checkpoints and never made it onto the hill. Don't know. Don't know if their ceremony took place or not. We'll find out. I think we'll hear more tomorrow. I checked in with Ottawa Police, and they've not indicated that any arrests have been made with regard to anything that we've been talking about here. So if something happened, it was quite inconsequential, at least so far. And there's the end of that story for today, but I don't think it's the end of the story, period. This is something that will continue to bubble to the surface because Adrian is, I think, determined to do something more with that symbol, as are a lot of other people. And I'll tell you this, simply by having him on the program yesterday, boy, did I come under attack. Yeah, there was a whole army of online people just coming down hard on me for not supporting the use of the swastika. Well, sorry. Not my thing. I've already explained why. I don't need to get into any of that tonight. Enough said. Let's move on. This is a lunar eclipse. So I'm going to show you a video of this. It's a live lunar eclipse that will begin as the moon enters the outer edge of Earth's shadow. And so this type of lunar eclipse is known as a penumbral, meaning that people who watch will be able to see the face of the moon darken without completely disappearing. So this event is happening now. And I'm no expert on this stuff, but this is a pretty cool looking video and it's live. So I'm just going to bring it up because I thought it was cool. And maybe somebody out there knows more about it than I do. I'm sure there are a lot of people who know more about this than me. I'm not doing this for any other reason than I think it looks cool. So that's why I'm showing this to you right now. Because this is like some lunar eclipse thing that's happening that I wasn't even aware of until we just were coming on the air. And I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. There's the moon and it looks pretty orange. So I'm showing it to you because I think it's cool. And I like that kind of stuff. That's it. And therefore, it is news. People ask, what is news? Well, I'll tell you what the news is around here. It's whatever we decide to put on the screen and talk about. And they keep saying best view, but I don't even know what that means because I don't know. I just don't know because 20 minutes ago or 23 minutes ago, it said best view in 2 minutes. And then it got to be 2 minutes and it didn't look any different to me. So but it's still cool. So there you go. How's that for analysis? There's a layman, non-expert, I don't know anything about this whatsoever commentary on some sort of a lunar eclipse that I can't even pronounce the name of properly. And that is news. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's move on to something that maybe I do know a little bit more about. Go back to Canada Day. So that was the kind of stuff going on Parliament Hill. We showed you people being strip searched again. And yes, there were a lot of people there, some protesters, that's true. But everything seemed to be very peaceful and pretty much all under control. So, yeah, I mean, there were some freedom groups up there, doing their megaphone stuff and waving their signs and spreading their messages. And Maxime Bernier was up there today. He had a few things to say, I guess. But, the big event where the big stage was set up and everything, we had the Governor General. We had people representing First Nations, a huge crowd. And then, of course, Mr. Fancy Socks, JT got up and started to speak as well. I won't torture you too long, but here's our Fancy Socks leader and what he had to say today. We'll just give you a little taste of it.
To the moon.
Oh yeah, there was
Merci aux aînés autochtones pour leur message et leur bénédiction. Merci aux artistes pour leur performance.
What's his name? The astronaut guy.
Je suis très heureux d'être ici en famille pour célébrer avec vous tous.
Canadian astronaut.
Today marks the 156th anniversary of our great country. Some of you have ancestors that were here way before Confederation, and some of you arrived more recently, like the new Canadian citizens we just welcomed. Anthony, Armel, Sylvie, Alric, Anaël, Diane, Nicolas, Jolan or Joshua, Ralph, Jessica, Rana, Hala, Ibrahim, Youssef, Jude, Ghazal. Canada is now officially your home. Welcome, my friends. Bienvenue au Canada, un pays où les différences et la diversité sont célébrées, un pays où on est libre de vie, d'être qui on veut et d'aimer qui on aime, un pays où chacun a une chance réelle et égale de réussir, un pays où on reconnaît les erreurs du passé et où on travaille sans relâche pour bâtir un meilleur avenir pour tout le monde. My friends, the world and our country are facing incredible challenges right now.
No kidding.
War has returned to Europe. Climate change is making extreme weather like wildfires, floods, and hurricanes even worse. Inflation, although it is getting better, is still putting real stress on families.
That's because
no
of
matter
you.
the challenges we face, we will get through it the same way we always do, by staying true to our values.
Values don't fix the economy, dude. Wife, Sophie.
C'est en restant fidèle à qui nous sommes et à nos valeurs qu'on arrive à relever les défis. Des valeurs comme la compassion, l'engagement et la responsabilité. Values like justice, openness, and democracy. That's Canada's advantage in the world now more than ever. Quand on traverse des épreuves.
Okay, enough. Blah, 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 blah. Canada Day. They talk about climate change. I mean, this is the whole thing about Canada Day 2023. At least we had one. I mean, they didn't try to lock us down or at least the Canadian flag wasn't flying at half staff. At least it's flying all the way up the pole today. But there's so much hypocrisy, so much that's literally upside down. He stands up there, talks about climate change. We heard from First Nations leaders who also stood there on the stage today, talked about climate change. Oh, they're so worried about the environment. And yet we have this war going on in Ukraine where they're using depleted uranium in the shells to destroy tanks, which then contaminates the country that we're trying to save with radioactive material that will cause birth defects, cancer, and who knows what other diseases for generations to come. Oh, but they're worried about, the environment. Don't use plastic straws. You can't have a bag when you go to the grocery store. But it's okay to blow crap up in Ukraine. Let's send more weapons to incinerate more buildings and people. Things make no sense. They preach, but what they're really saying is do as I say, not as I do. And they justify their actions just by saying it's okay with information warfare to get you to buy in and to scare you, to manipulate you with other information in order to get you to act in particular ways and even to vote in particular ways. It makes no sense. And there's so much polarization politically in the country. And I don't know where it's going to end. But right now, things don't seem to be on a very positive course. Not at all. You can see the unrest still out there, the discontent. You can feel it. Adrian with his flag. People frustrated because they feel like they don't have a voice at the polls, even though you get a vote. Chris Sky running for mayor and getting 1% of the vote. So there's a portion of the electorate that just feels like they don't count. No, I'm not going to buy into the Chris Sky lost the election because of cheating. He got 1.1%. That's a whole lot of cheating. Okay. No, people just didn't support him. Why? Well, maybe the system isn't fair. That's probably true. Because information, the media is controlled by government. So people are manipulated that way. That's how they influence the vote. And by denying access to debates for certain candidates, by favoring certain candidates and giving, the front runners, the ones they like, more attention than others. But anyway, that's sort of a sidebar. All I can say is Canada is on a collision course with not just unrest, but worse. And I hope it doesn't deteriorate into what we're seeing in France, where again, over 1,300 people have now been arrested after 4 straight nights of protests. And all of this triggered by the fatal police shooting of a teen who was driving in a car. Racism! And the aftermath of this is that cars are being burned in the streets, buildings have been set on fire, stores being looted. We've seen this kind of thing in the United States with the Black Lives Matter riots. We've seen, mostly peaceful protests where business districts have been essentially burned to the ground, car dealerships set ablaze. Well, it's happening in France, and it's happening on a huge scale. So, on such a large scale that some would say this is not just riots. This amounts to essentially maybe some sort of color revolution or something more, some sort of an act of war. This is a video released by the leader of Poland comparing his country with France. Poland. France. Well, is that fair? I don't know, but that's what he released. And then we have this. So apparently the police and the police unions in France have told Macron that they may stand down because they view this as some sort of war, that it's escalated to that point, And these officers are saying that this is beyond what they signed up for. And what we're seeing is the government using a lot of force to repel these riots. And, for every action, you get an equal and opposite reaction, generally speaking. And so that's what we're seeing on the streets of France. Now, I see that our guest, Kevin, is actually, I must have sent the wrong link because he's in the wrong studio. So I have to resend this link to get Kevin and Lori on the program over here. So why don't we take a short break, and I'll take care of all that technical stuff and be right back after this.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, I'm back. So while we wait for our guest to arrive, I just want to do this. I'm just going to call Adrian. And we'll ask him what happened with his flag thing today. Hang on, see if he picks up. Stay with me.
I'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you. Bye.
There we go.
Going on over there, and now we're here to destroy that unity between NDP and all that bullcrap. Hey, Rick.
Hey, how are you, sir?
Not bad. How are you?
Good. I'm on the air live. I just wanted to dial in because I didn't see if anything happened up in Ottawa with the flag, and I just wanted to find out if maybe you could tell us what happened with it today.
They risen it in Ottawa at the Parliament building. 31 of those flags have been apprehended currently or taken down. And the Crazy Brotherhood separated the security, and they went up there and risen that flag there. So,
okay, did anyone get arrested?
No, because they got pushed off. We are pretty smart with that aspect. They're supposed to be arresting people, but they got followed out. So they knew that they could not stop it.
I see. So 31
of the flags have been apprehended apparently, or have been taken down. From what I hear, I have to get more information at what's going on from their side, because I had to shut off my phone as I was over here doing meetings.
I see. Okay.
But from that point on, the two women and the Klanswoman went up there, introduced themselves, and they went up there, did the ceremony, and they're not supposed to videotape the ceremony.
Okay.
And then they taken it up to that base because it was unceded territory, so they could not. They had no jurisdiction there. It was the problem of getting to that spot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
okay.
But they did it, and they rose in the flag up there, and that was it. And then they're all happy now. The clan, that's what's going on. So there was a lot of protocol. There's a lot of here and there all over the place. And now this Crazy Brotherhood they're the ones that separated the crowd. So that's good.
The Crazy Brotherhood? Who's that?
The crazy Indian Brotherhood.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And so did they raise any of the flags on Parliament Hill?
No, they
None.
were
They got 'em
supposed to. Here's the thing: if they got stopped, the protocol was if they got stopped, they were going to raise all flags. But if they were let through, which they have been, and the cops, as soon as they saw that happening, they kind of pushed themselves away and they kind of walked away on that aspect of it because of the offering that they had with the ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
They knew that they couldn't go on the ceremonial land or that unceded land. That's how it all started. And then after that, they did their ceremony and they rose their flag, and now they're gone. Now they can't do fuck all about it.
So they did raise a flag, or am I misunderstanding?
Yes.
One.
Yes.
Okay. They rose.
So there you go. They try to stop, but then that was it. They try to keep it as hush hush as they could. But like they said, we wanted to make sure the crowd was off the way while they did it. So
I see.
And it was respectful on both sides. And I take it from the PP, they were respectful as soon as they got there. They probably understood that it was a bigger problem than they anticipated. And that was the negotiation this morning.
I see. Okay.
So,
well,
there you go.
Yeah. All right.
It was a victory for all of us.
All right. I understand that you're busy there, so I won't keep you, but thank you for bringing us up to date on that.
You're welcome, my friend. You have yourself a good day.
Okay, you too. Take care. Bye.
Goodbye.
Okay, so I hope you guys could have heard that. So let me just check. Could you guys hear it okay? Could you hear that? And what I just got there? I guess so. I think so. All right. So that's what happened, I guess, on Parliament Hill today. One flag risen with the swastika on it. Whatever side of the issue you're on, that's just what happened, according to Adrian, and no video taken because they didn't want to videotape the ceremony. 31 other flags confiscated by parliamentary police at those checkpoints that we showed you earlier. And that's where things stand right now. And I see now Lori is in the wrong studio because I sent you the wrong link, Lori. So when you hear this, and I hope that you are monitoring this, I sent you a new link in by email, and I will send it to you by private chat in the studio that you are in right now as well. Hang on just a second. Really sorry, but setting things up tonight was technically more complicated than normal. So here I am. Now I have echo in my head. Reverb. And here's the private chat. Okay. There's the link. Okay. This is really weird. I don't know if, hello, Lori. I know you're not in the one broadcast, you're in the other one, but I don't know if you can hear me or not. Probably not. This is, okay. Get out of that studio. Go to the other one. I sent you a link. There we go. Okay, I'm going to close this off now. I think that she got me. Okay, so she's going to come in. Here we go. Now we're in the right place. All right.
Oh, hi.
There.
Looks like I came to the right place finally.
Yeah. We're multi-streaming on different platforms, and it's crazy. You don't understand at home, folks. But Lori was off in the cyber universe.
I was
someplace.
talking to myself in the studio all alone going, where's Rick?
Cyber Twilight.
Where the heck is everybody? So does that mean I sent the wrong link to our friend Kevin in Crimea? Do I need to resend it?
Yeah. Yes.
And Paul too, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
I expect so. Sorry.
Can you gab for a few minutes while I do that? And I'll be right back.
I've been doing that since before you got here, so I'll just keep on flapping my gums.
You just keep flapping those lips, Walker. I'll be right back.
Okay. All right. So, yeah. Oh, more video out of France, and this will help tee up, I think, what we will probably end up talking about when Kevin joins us as well. You know, you can't tell me this is just about one teenager being shot in a car by cops. There's more that generates this. There's more that causes this kind of unrest than just that. I mean, there's history behind it, of course, but there's also politics, you know, definitely politics. Hang on. I'm going to run a little promo again, and I'm going to go over and tell Kevin in the other studio that he has to move over here. So bear with me, folks. I will be right back, and we'll bring Kevin and Lori back on the broadcast, and then we'll really be rocking and rolling.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Okay, I'm back, and there we go. Now we're in the right place. Hey, Kevin, how are you?
Doing okay. Early in the morning, so it's quiet.
Yeah, well, you're on in a totally different time zone, and I see you still have Whopper behind you.
I do.
The big computer from War Games.
Showing my age.
I love it. Are you there, Spock? That's Lori's name when she's not only in the system only by audio. Like she's Spock's brain.
Spock's brain. Roger that. I am here, but I am busy sending an email to Paul, our next guest.
Okay.
Making sure he's ready. Good. I see you got Kevin. I just sent you an email, Kevin. Please disregard. We're having technical difficulties today, but you guys chat for a minute and I'll be right with you.
Okay, Spock. Over and out.
Roger that.
I'm glad you're here because we need your expertise tonight, especially, you know, I want to talk about this whole Wagner thing in Russia. I want to talk about this unrest in France, because I'm sure that you have some perspectives on this and some information that will enlighten us. Let's start with what happened in Russia.
Well, you know, take everything you heard in the West, including some of the major military analysts, and throw it out the window. You know, yeah, something happened. I just happened to be going through Rostov-on-Don, which is actually where all this occurred. And just to clarify for people, they keep hearing Rostov, which is what Russia calls both Rostov and Rostov-on-Don, two different cities, one 200 kilometers away and one about 1,100 kilometers away. So all this happened 1,100 kilometers. So, you know what, 600-700 miles from Moscow. And just happened to be going through there late Friday night, early Saturday morning. And, you know, amazingly, yeah, Wagner was in the streets in Rostov-on-Don, but people weren't running up to them, hugs. You know, about the only thing you saw was people mad because they were ruining the streets. Russians don't get excited about things like that often. And, you know, it wasn't as big as it was made out to be in the West. I was in Moscow Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Yes, the Kremlin was closed off. You could not get into Red Square, and you had to stay on the opposite side of the highway from the front of the Kremlin. So, you know, it wasn't like, you know, miles long closed around Moscow. The roads weren't blocked. Monday was declared as a holiday for security reasons by the mayor of Moscow, but you would have never known it by being
Holiday.
there.
Now that's an interesting twist, because what we were hearing over here in the West was that it's martial law, that Moscow was locked down, like you said, for security reasons, but they just called it a holiday. Really?
Yeah, it's a day off, stay home.
There you go. It's not an
it was
emergency. It's a
stay home.
holiday. Just stay home.
Yeah.
Okay.
We were sofa shopping on Sunday, and we were asking people all over. It's like, well, are you open Monday? Well, yeah. Why? So, well, it's been declared a day off for security reasons. Oh, nah. I'm working tomorrow, and literally, I had people pinging me in Telegram and saying, oh, don't go to the Duma on Monday because they're closed. I aired an interview
they
that
had every indication that something was going to happen before it happened.
Yeah, I had the indication that I was going to go to the Duma and I was going to record an interview and I was going to stream it tonight. So, and that's what happened. People were coming and going, no questions asked. It really, other than the Kremlin itself being cordoned off, nothing was really going on. There were not tanks in the streets. There were not, I've seen reports about armored vehicles on the streets of Moscow.
Saw some video that purported to be that.
Yeah, I was watching Rick's video on France in the other channel, and looked a lot like what they were claiming was Moscow.
Right.
That's right. That's true. Yeah.
I can tell you that there were no armored vehicles and tanks and armed men in the streets of Moscow. Even with the Kremlin cordoned off, there was a great lack of armed people guarding it. Now, I'm sure there were some somewhere, but
right.
No more than.
It was interesting. You're right, Kevin. I was watching like some live cams of buildings around the Kremlin, just kind of keeping an eye on the Kremlin that day, and traffic was moving normally. People walking around. It looked like just another day in Moscow. So I'm sure the building was secure, but like you say, it was kind of invisible security, which is the best kind of security. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, there were some people trying to walk through the Red Square. You could not get in. All the door. They have this gum shopping center on the edge of Red Square, and you could get into the shopping center, and I could literally throw a softball from there to the Kremlin building, the yellow building, and this is how close people were. Now, the doors were locked. You couldn't go out there. There were police out, but no military.
Yeah, I talked to, we were doing a big Twitter space as all this stuff was unfolding. I was on with Mario Nuffel, and we had like millions of people tuned in as this whole thing was unfolding. And of course, you had the alarmists on one side, the pro-NATO, pro-Ukrainian crowd, guys like Malcolm Nance, who were predicting the end of the world. There'll be a new president in Russia by sundown, that kind of thing. But then we had people like Tara Reid, my friend Tara Reid, who joined that space. And she's like, I'm walking around Moscow right now. I don't see any tanks. I don't see any troops. I don't see anybody panicking. Everything's normal. Most places are open. Just went for lunch. She said it's really not a big deal. While everybody else on that space was freaking out and predicting the end of Russia as we know it.
Yeah, Tara and I were together on Saturday. So
were you? That's awesome. That's cool.
So
you were in Moscow, or she came to Crimea?
No, I was in Moscow. That's how I ended up in Rostov-on-Don Friday night. I was on my way to Moscow for Saturday to we were recording some TV shows.
Very
So
cool. So what, I mean, we've heard mutiny come out of, the mouths of, well, Russian officials, including Vladimir Putin. They used mutiny, rebellion. I think maybe not the best choice of words. And here in the West, we're hearing, we've heard the word coup, attempted coup. What do you make of it all from your end?
It was definitely, I wouldn't call it a coup. A coup wouldn't have been successful. It really, it was about Prigozhin and money. A lot of people don't know that when Russia accepted the Donetsk and Lugansk territories into the Russian Federation, Wagner became illegal. They could not legally operate in that area because private military companies aren't allowed to operate on Russian territory. So they did have a contract with the Russian government through May of this year to provide security and to fight. But because they were now illegal, unless they were under the command of the Russian Federation Ministry of Defense, Prigozhin refused to sign the contract to put his men under the military because it would have cost him money. So he had close to a $1 billion deal with the Russian Federation over fighting in Donbass. I don't remember the exact figure, like $900 million. And, this is why he started jumping up and down in March and April about not having shells, not having weapons. No, he apparently had weapons because he turned them against Russia. But, Shoigu and Putin just refused to give him, it would have required Vladimir Putin to say, I give you a special disposition to operate on Russian Federation territory. And constitutionally, it can't happen. And Putin follows the law. So he wasn't going to make exceptions. My belief, and this is the information I've gotten from insiders I know, is that Prigozhin was just being greedy and he wanted this new contract signed. And come May 1st, when his contract was no good, Shoigu just let him use up all their weapons and bullets. So go home.
Well, that jives with what Scott Ritter's take was on what happened, basically, although Scott goes a little bit further and he opines, I guess you'd call this just an opinion of his, that there was some Western money involved, perhaps, that we were trying to turn Prigozhin and use him for our own devices in trying to effect a regime change in Russia. What do you think of that theory?
I think it's a possible theory. I think had the West been involved in it and given him, supposedly they found boxes with 4 billion rubles. So, roughly $500,000, outside of one of his buildings. I've looked at the photos. It's just a bunch of boxes. It looks like it was staged. I don't think that was true. But Prigozhin is a businessman. He isn't a military leader. You keep hearing about how he bravely led his men into battle. He was around the front lines sometimes when, not that close to the front lines, but he's a businessman. And to lose that amount of money, just wasn't acceptable to him. Now, the CIA, they've made a great point of saying we weren't involved. But of course we have, like Blinken saying that, they could have used that to their benefit. There is proof that Prigozhin was talking to the SBU. So, it's likely something was going on. I don't necessarily think the United States was funding him, or he would have had a lot more American weapons to fight with.
You would think. But we don't really know what he had, do we? in terms of weaponry and where it came from? I mean, we assume he was stockpiling secretly weapons for months.
Well, yeah, he had some tanks with the V on it, so they were, and the Z, so he had tanks from Crimea and stuff that had been around in Donbass for a while. But what did he have? We don't know. He shot some helicopters out of the sky. 12 Russian servicemen died in that. Prigozhin claims that there was no bloodshed, which is a lie.
That's a lie.
And even 2 of his own men supposedly were killed. I haven't been able to verify. This is another thing that Scott Ritter was saying, is that the Russian Federation bombed him or his men, and 2 men died. I can tell you from being in the Channel 1 TV studios on Saturday, I've seen the proof that the Russian Federation did not strike his camps in the rear of the lines. He was on the 3rd line of defense, so quite a ways back, and Russia did not bomb him.
Thanks for confirming that, because there's been a lot of speculation about who actually attacked that camp, or if the camp was attacked at all. It was very hard to tell in the video what had happened there. The trees didn't appear to be burned. I had a lot of questions when I saw that video.
The information I've seen is there just wasn't an attack. Anything that showed a possible attack was probably from, Ukrainian attacks on them at some point, but it wouldn't have been that far back from the front lines.
So do you think that Prigozhin himself would have staged that attack as his own false flag, as a justification to do what he did?
Yeah. Hey, I want another, billion US dollar contract. So if you don't give it to me, I'm going to make you all look bad.
So you're saying that he may well have killed a couple of his own men to advance his own agenda for money?
I don't know that he even did that. The soldiers that were on the lines in Donetsk, and I don't know the exact number, but these are the guys who did not participate. So I've heard some analysts, including Scott, say, well, they're sitting there waiting to be sent to Belarus. But most of these guys signed contracts with the Russian Federation military to continue fighting.
That's what I thought. Right.
Yeah.
They wanted no part of this uprising, this rebellion.
Yeah.
Right.
And the few people, I shouldn't say few, I guess there were a couple thousand, actually were not commanders. They were, as Putin put it, men who were misled by their leadership. So they're the ones who are going to Belarus.
So Wagner total had about 50,000 men. That's the number I hear. Is that about right? Do you think total? Not to go into Moscow, but I mean their total fighting force so far is about.
Yeah, I've heard numbers between 35 and 50,000.
Yeah, that's about what I'm hearing. So that means that if he had 5,000 men for his mutiny, that was 10% or less of his total fighting force who decided to go along with this.
Yeah, and I wasn't in Rostov-on-Don long enough to count men, but I'd say it was more like 1,000, maybe 1,200.
I figured those numbers were exaggerated, greatly exaggerated, because on the day that it was unfolding, which I guess was a week ago today, I think it was last Saturday, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was last Saturday.
We heard he's got 50,000 men headed for Moscow, right? Mm-hmm. Then it shrunk to 30,000 men. Then it was 20,000. Then it was 10,000. Finally, they settled on about 5,000. But I even felt like that number was probably exaggerated too.
It was exaggerated. Like I say, the videos I've seen, what I saw in the streets there, it was maybe 1,000 men.
Yeah, it didn't look like 5,000 men at all to me. And, at least what I saw.
1,000, couple of tanks. They ran down the gate to the Ministry of Defense there. It all basically happened around the military base.
That's what I thought. And so this is crazy. What were they thinking? Did they really think that they were going to take Moscow with only 5,000 men or 1,000 men? Are they out of their minds? I think it was really the plan, or was this all a bluff to blackmail Putin into giving him more money?
I think it was just a bluff. Give me money or I'm going to march on you with some of my men.
That's a suicidal mission. Is he nuts? That's crazy.
And I've even heard, our friend Scott talking about columns of vehicles going to Moscow, and they were within 200 kilometers. So, less than 100 miles from Moscow. And there were no columns of vehicles going up the M4 highway. And if you think about it, and I think Scott may have got caught in this Rostov versus Rostov-on-Don misnomer.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's because he said, well, they were about 200 kilometers away, but think about it. 1,100 kilometers, it would take, if you could get 90 kilometers an hour, 45 miles an hour out of those vehicles on Russian roads, it would still take 12 to 18 hours to get from Rostov to Moscow. I was on a high-speed express train, and it took me that long.
Oh, well, that changes the timeline considerably. What we heard is once they crossed into, of course, most of these pundits that were speculating that day had no idea what the actual distance was to Moscow. So as soon as they crossed the border at Rostov, they were saying, they'll be in Moscow within 6 hours.
That would be some mighty fast vehicles on Russian roads.
And we're talking about tanks, and these vehicles don't move that fast.
Yeah. Maximum speed limit in Russia is generally about 90 kilometers an hour. And you can get that out of a good superhighway. But again, you're still 12 hours away.
And I'm sure there was civilian traffic on those roads as well. It's not like they had the highway to themselves for their convoy.
Yeah, there was. People were being told not to use the road if they didn't have to. They were not blocked off. I saw the pictures of, farmers with backhoes digging up the roads to slow down Wagner.
Yeah.
Never happened.
So, that didn't happen. Okay, now I'm really confused. So much of the video that we saw last Saturday, we had no way of verifying it. It was just floating around on Telegram, floating around on Twitter. And so we didn't know what was real, what was staged, what might be old. And oftentimes reporters didn't have time or didn't take the time to double check before they aired it on the news.
Well, it's pretty hard for them to verify facts in Russia when most of them aren't willing to come here and they want to do their analysis from the other side of the ocean.
We're sitting in a hotel room in Kiev.
Yes, sitting in a hotel in Warsaw, pretending they're in Kiev.
Yes.
Ignore most of what you heard. I have it from extremely good sources that I cannot name. Now I'm going to sound like the propaganda spitter, because I won't name my source. But Putin was aware of this before Friday.
I figured he did. Of course he knew. They have excellent intelligence in Russia.
Yeah. How can you expect the CIA to have known a couple of days in advance or even a week in advance? And
And the
FSB
Russians
not.
didn't know, right? That's something I often point out. I study the Cold War a lot. I'm a history buff, and the Cold War period fascinates me because it's all these spy capers. It's all a big game of spy versus spy, the CIA versus the KGB. And we were never once, not once that I'm aware of during the Cold War, ever able to surprise the Soviets, the Russians. We thought we had them a few times, right? We were going to sneak up on them like at the Bay of Pigs. How'd that work out? Castro knew we were coming like at least a week before we landed at the Bay of Pigs. We were never able to sneak up on the KGB. And even though the KGB no longer exists, I guarantee you the Russians saw us coming. This was not a surprise.
Yeah. Well, think about it. You've got all these men, they're 50,000, 30,000, 5,000 men with armored vehicles and tanks in Donetsk. And you're expected to believe that they went from Donetsk to mainland Russia. And I'll just call it that, for the defining border, without anybody ever noticing. I guarantee you, if I get in a tank out on the street in front of the house here and I start driving down the road, I'm going to have somebody asking questions.
That's right. The government will definitely notice that.
So I'm curious to get your take on what's going on with these generals that we are being told have been arrested. What is going on now that all of this has happened? Is Putin looking to hold people accountable? Are there actually arrests being made, or is this more hype?
It's hype. General Armageddon is still in charge of things. Shoigu's still in charge of things. Like I say, they knew about it in advance. Putin said in his statement on Monday that he had taken steps to avoid bloodshed. He ordered the military not to shoot at them, and he wanted to find a peaceful solution. This is Putin. This is why people love him. And, it was resolved that way. So I'm sure that Lukashenko was involved in this ahead of time as well. I don't think this was a last minute Lukashenko picking up the red phone and saying, hey, Vlad, I'm willing to help you out here. They've got camps already for the Wagner guys who have been accused of treason. And though Prigozhin won't be charged for his insurrection or whatever you want to call it, they are looking into his finances. They're looking into the men who participated, their finances. They're interviewing everybody and they're asking, what went on. And I think you will see some of these guys charged.
Well, I certainly hope
Scott,
so, Kevin. They can't just let this whole thing drop and leave these guys unpunished. You just can't do that. You have to make it clear that this is not going to be tolerated or it'll happen again.
Yes. Scott gave his opinion that, Putin would poison him or, have him thrown out a top floor window, something like that. I won't go that far.
I heard him say that.
Yeah, I don't believe that really.
No, I don't either, because that would be a propaganda win for the West. If Putin harms a hair on Prigozhin's chinny chin, or if he kills him, they'll say he's another Stalin. They'll say he's a brutal dictator. You know what they'll say. So I just think he should punish him legally with a long prison sentence, though. That's just
I think banishing him to Belarus, putting him on the border with Ukraine, and making him and his men train the Belarusian military is like putting him in prison. Now, he is keeping some of the Wagner business. He has contracts in Africa for security there. and he's still being paid for that. But, you know, greed is greed. I want more. The more you have, the more you want.
Right.
Yeah. So what next, do you think?
I think it's all done and over with. When I first heard it Friday night, I said, you know, this will be all done and over with within 24 hours. And it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, the heightened security in Moscow, like on Monday, you know, even around the Kremlin is closed today, even, you know, is because they believe that there could be some stray guys running around. But it's not the military that's visible, it's the police. You know, I was outside the Duma on Monday, and what we see is, you know, they're checking everybody who goes into the Duma. This is normal, but they had, you know, 2 guys and an undercover guy walking up and down the street in front of the Duma with AK-47s or AK-72s, you know, on their arms. So I saw 2 military guys Monday.
Can't blame them. That's exactly what they should do. I mean, we know for months now, and the attacks have ramped up across the border into Russia proper. This has been increasing in severity and regularity. And then on Victory Day, you know, well, before Victory Day, you know, we had that drone attack on the Kremlin. We know that the Ukrainians were sending drones at Red Square on Victory Day. I mean, they're really looking to do something big, which also leads me to ask you about the latest on the nuclear power plant, the Zaporozhye. You know, we're hearing that, well, of course, in the West, they say that Russia's going to blow up their own nuclear power plant, which I, of course, do not believe, but I would tend to believe that that might be the Ukrainians on our orders or with our backing. And this NATO summit is coming up, which makes me wonder if they're looking to concoct some kind of big false flag incident to kick this war up a notch during that NATO summit.
I keep hearing about these, you know, supposed false flags that Russia is going to commit. You know, the dam. Russia blew up the dam and wiped out their own positions. You know, they're going to blow up the nuclear power plant, radiate their own territories that they fought hard for at this point, destroy the water system in Crimea, you know, with the radiation.
Doesn't make
you know,
any
and
sense.
we heard last year's NATO summit was the same thing. Something big is going to happen. The West is going to provoke Russia so that they can bring NATO in.
I remember.
You know, I will sleep well during the summit regardless.
You don't seem at all worried. You're cool as a cucumber, as usual, Kevin.
What's to worry about, you know? What did somebody tell me the other day? One of the guys I was talking to said, well, what got you to move to Crimea? You moved to a dangerous place. Well, Moscow's dangerous right now if if you're worried about 3 drones versus, 50 a day going the other direction.
Hell, Chicago is more dangerous than Moscow. Paris is more dangerous.
France is more dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he says, well, yeah, but there's an earthquake fault where you live. I'm like, well, I lived in California. Here. Where can you go that it's safe?
I live in Oklahoma. We have tornadoes all the time. I lost a roof 3 months ago. It's just
I actually mentioned tornadoes in Oklahoma too. I was thinking of you.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. You've been there.
I can tell you, when I was on the train listening to all this stuff going on, there were a bunch of Russian military there. And these guys laughed about it too. So I don't think it's going to be a big problem. I think the West understands that Russia is a nuclear power. And, if they cause anything too big and they threaten Russia's territory, the world will end as we know it.
That's right. And I don't think they're that stupid or that crazy. I mean, you saw how NATO quickly put out a statement last Saturday as all this was going on. NATO said, hey, it's not us. We've got nothing to do with it. Please don't nuke us. They wanted to make it real clear that, and everyone was very nervous about who was in charge and what about the nukes. And nobody wanted Prigozhin having access to the nuclear codes or trying to be the new president of new leader of Russia. There was just so much conjecture and speculation going on as to how this would end. And even in the West, the guys that were cheering Prigozhin and hoping he succeeded, they sure didn't want him leading Russia because he's a loose cannon.
Well, and what did they expect? Prigozhin claims that he was going after the military heads, Shoigu.
He never said he was going after Putin. Never.
Well, in fact, he said he was not going after Putin.
That's right.
But think about it. You topple the top military advisors to Putin, you're going to topple his government. And it just wasn't going to happen. They had already made preparations. Putin kept his calm. I hear people saying, well, why didn't he just wipe them off the face of the earth? Because he cares about human beings. I will give you options. And if you don't want to take those options, then I'll deal with it.
So can we kind of shift gears here a little bit? I'd like to get some thoughts regarding what's going on in France.
I agree with what you were saying earlier. I don't think it has a lot to do with, one teenager being killed. It makes me think of George Floyd. We had all these riots in the United States based on, the killing of one guy, but, there was a good amount, just like in France, mob mentality. And, you've got the frustrations with the government been going on for, the Yellow Vests have been protesting about this for 2 years now?
Yeah.
I think it's just an excuse to continue pushing on Macron. I don't know how he got reelected with so many people who dislike him, but I don't think the way they're reacting to the protesters is going to buy him any friends. I think it's heavy-handed. The video you were showing a little while ago, they had some armored vehicles out there. Gee, it looked like Moscow, supposedly. But, all the stuff blowing up and whatnot was fireworks.
That's right.
Somebody lit a big pile of fireworks.
That's right. I mean, they have burned vehicles and some buildings have been set on fire, just like we saw with a lot of these, we've seen in the past with Black Lives Matter protests in the United States. It's a very similar kind of thing, I think.
And I'm not there. I don't know how much of it is real and how much isn't. But I think a lot of it is staged for effect.
So who do you think is behind that kind of propaganda or information warfare? Or is there any way to know?
I don't know at this point in time to really know. If I was going to guess, it would be the same guys that have weakened Western Europe over Ukraine. The same three-letter friends in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
They seem to be behind everything.
Yeah, and they seem to have it's like they leave their fingerprints all over it or a signature, you can just it's a pattern. It's a brand. It's what it is.
Yeah. And the media, I mean, that, like I say, that video you showed, it was obvious, there was a fire in the background. There were things going off. It was fireworks. So, how much of that was the media staging it? It's kind of like, the BBC reporter laying in the trench in Ukraine, talking about being shot at and he was in danger. And then the old babushka comes walking by with her shopping bag,
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. It made you watch it though, didn't it?
It did. Yeah. Although I mean, I do get the sense that there is unrest in France to some degree. But when you're watching media, the cameras are focused on the action. You're not seeing what's going on 3 streets over where people are having a barbecue, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I believe this is going on. I think there's protests. There were in the US after George Floyd, but were they as big as the media made it out to be? And who controls the media? Same guys again. You've got unrest in Germany, Denmark, all of these countries. Why? Because the United States had to stick their fingers into Russia, the Nord Stream pipeline. They've basically ruined the economy in Western Europe, and people are tired of it.
Yeah, that's what gets people out into the streets is an economy that is under pressure, where people are seeing rising prices, inflation, unemployment, where they can't afford to buy the necessities of life. That'll get people out into the streets every time when they're hungry.
Yeah. Well, I think my daughter is here from Colorado right now, and she talks about paying $6-7 a gallon for gas at the pumps. And when I did the conversion in Moscow the other day, we're paying like $2.20 a gallon. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, here in Canada, it's Canada Day. So to celebrate, our government has tacked on, I think it's 13 cents per liter as a tax, or it might be 17. And by the time they're done, they're going to increase it 4 times, and it'll be over 60 cents per liter, which will put us to a total. It'll get us well over $2 per liter for gasoline by the time they're done.
Yeah. So about $8 Canadian, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, you have to pay for all those obsolete weapons that are being sent to Ukraine somehow.
That's what I was saying too. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because what I've assessed this as being is a giant garage sale where they are a dumping ground for all the old weapons from the West and the NATO countries, where they get to dump them into Ukraine, but they don't discount everything. They write them a bill for the full pop on all the tanks and the guns and everything. And then the people in Ukraine are saddled with the debt of paying for all of these weapons, which are on the verge of becoming obsolete, if not obsolete already.
Well, better yet, they then take your tax dollars, give it to Ukraine to pay for those weapons. And of course, most of it goes in their pockets. Right. So you bought the weapons originally. You are paying for the weapons the second time for the old ones to be bought. And then you're going to pay the third time to have the new weapons built.
That's right. It's insane. And it ends up being a way of, and I hate to use the word, but it's true. I mean, they're sort of enslaving us, the middle class, the poor, the people of Ukraine, while they're telling us that they're trying to free us and provide liberty and democracy, when in reality, we're going to pay, our children are going to pay, our grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren will be paying for this for generations to come.
They're trying to oppress the people in the West, bring them under control, eliminate the conservative class, because the conservatives, we're the ones who complain, and we're the ones who will stand up and do something about it. So, if you're a man and you want to sleep with a man, go ahead. But, it's not right in my eyes. I don't want to see it taught in the schools. But what can I say?
And we saw there that someone over on Vancouver Island is saying here in Canada, they're already paying over $2 per liter for gasoline, which means by the time the Trudeau regime is finished with us with this new round of carbon taxation, will be on Vancouver Island. I'll bet you there'll be like $2.40 a liter.
Yeah.
Getting, pushing $8.50. They could be at $9 a gallon before you know it.
And then for the green agenda, they will eventually tell you have to buy an electric car, where they're actually destroying the ecosystem worse to make the batteries. So it's all money.
Yep. And that's what I was saying earlier tonight, too, here on this Canada Day, as we celebrate everything. Everything is upside down. Black is white, white is black, up is down, down is up. And to save the environment, we're electrifying the automobile industry. And because we're so concerned about the environment, we're making sure that we send depleted uranium shells to Ukraine so that they can blow up tanks and contaminate the countryside with radioactive material.
Yeah, but they're also sending the crap tanks. The Abrams that they shoot those shells with are the original, steel ones that are not armored very well. So, Russia blows them up before they ever get there.
Yeah. You have a real background in, I guess, cybersecurity and information warfare. So, I mean, overall, just give me your assessment of how much was information warfare a part of what we witnessed in Russia and even what we're seeing in Paris right now? And I hope that isn't too broad a question, but as I watched all of this, I honestly didn't get that excited about what I was watching happen in Russia. It looked to me like there was a lot of propaganda, information warfare. That seemed to be more of what was going on than anything else. What's your assessment?
I can tell you for a fact that in 2020, I was doing training for the Department of Defense on cyber war, information warfare against Russia over Ukraine, Crimea, and Georgia. So, this all started under Trump, but right about the time, I don't know, a few months before, the elections, Department of Defense, Pentagon. And, I was actually talking about this with Tara on this TV show we were on Saturday, and Lloyd Austin, talk about an idiot, but it's all propaganda. He was appointed by Biden, and they had this sexual abuse scandal come out immediately. And he went on the media and he said, I am going to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to look into it. We're going to prosecute people for this, and I'm not going to tolerate it in my military. What has he done about it since? 3 years later?
Haven't heard a
zero.
thing.
Yeah. You still in the U.S. military have the sexual assault cases. My research on it is the cases have gone up and the prosecutions have gone down.
Right.
Like to the tune of 10 or 11%. The cases going up and prosecutions down close to 30%.
Right, because prosecutions bring with it bad press. That's what they don't want.
But it's propaganda. Let's get out there. Let's get ahead of it. And, the whole Russia thing, lot of propaganda. The West trying to make people, say Putin is weak. He won't be president in 48 hours. His military will go against him. But I can tell you, in front of that Duma building. There were people protesting at both entrances, front and back. And they had signs. They were calling for the Duma to pass laws to give Putin all the power to put down Wagner.
I believe that. And I was going to
Yeah.
ask, I don't know if you've heard anything since in this past week, but have any opinion polls been conducted there in Russia, kind of taking the temperature of the people? Do they stand behind Putin more than ever before now, or is some public support slipping after this incident? Are you hearing anything yet on that?
That's interesting you ask, because my daughter was working at the Levada Center over the summer, and that's what
Cool.
they do.
Yep. That's
And
what they do. Biggest polling organization in Russia, right? Levada?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like the Gallup poll of Russia, basically.
The Gallup poll of Russia.
Yeah.
Support for Putin has actually gone up.
I believe it. That's what I thought would happen.
Yeah.
That's what I've been saying ever since this happened. I'm like, watch.
I was
They'll love
following
you
a
more than
I was
ever.
following a car. Yeah, I was following a car the other day, and on the back of it, it said, "Those who cancel Tchaikovsky listen to Wagner."
Ah!
And when I posted this picture, I had people saying, "Well, that seems to be pro Wagner." And it's like, no, you don't understand. It is a Russian slap in the face to the United States
Yeah.
and Western Europe. You cancel Tchaikovsky, you will believe what he says. People here do not believe it.
And we definitely don't listen to Wagner. That's Nazi music, right? We don't cancel it. We just don't listen to it.
Russians don't care. They listen to it anyway.
Do they really? I thought Wagner would bring back bad memories for Russians. They wouldn't endorse it. Wouldn't want to hear it.
I don't know. It's classical music. Russians don't pay a lot of attention to that. You don't hear about things like France over here. It's not in the news. They don't care. The politicians pay attention. People like, us, we pay attention because we're looking for stuff like that. But
yeah, just give me some of the Seventh Symphony by Shostakovich and my heart swells. I would think that makes the heart of every Russian swell when they hear that symphony. And I'm an American and it still gets me,
Yeah. I don't know. It's
and the Russian national anthem is one of the most beautiful pieces of music I think ever written. One of the most beautiful melodies I've ever heard. You don't have to be Russian to be moved by that piece of music.
Well, you know what I like? I like the fact that you don't care.
I like that too.
I wish I could be more like you. I mean, I've been sort of in a not caring mode a little bit with some of this stuff, but man, you are just cool as a cucumber. You're like my dad, actually. He just doesn't care.
Yeah, you get a little older, you just kind of don't give a shit.
It's the key to a long life.
Whatever happens,
you're a lot less
happens.
stressed out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get excited over other things, but like my contractors, having to redo their work 3 times, but it's like I told somebody, I could have stepped off the curb in Moscow and got run over by a bus. So bus,
Right.
drone, nuclear weapon,
Life
Whatever.
is short. Enjoy it while you can. Why get
Yeah.
upset about things that you don't have any control over anyway?
Yeah.
Well, Kevin, we're getting to the end of our time with you. Is there anything you think we might be missing? Anything you would like to add?
All I can say is people should really take a look at the Russian government, how they operate, the people that are their representatives, the members of the Duma, and really, rather than listening to the propaganda about them and the things the mainstream media puts out, look and see how they actually work. It's the way the United States' Congress was set up when the country was founded. And the US does not operate that way. I don't know enough about what's going on in Canada other than, they're a Me Too screwed up government too. But, I reached out to one of the Duma members back about 2 months ago, and I said, hey, can I interview you? And believe it or not, on social media, she replied to me and she said, sure. And had a good interview. She talked about why she ran for office. She ran against men. She was elected by the people in her region, Altai region. And she says, now it is my job to show them that they made the right choice. It isn't about what I told them for the election. It's about following through and doing the right thing. And in general, this is how Western governments were set up originally. This is how Russia operates. Yeah.
If only our Congress was like that. Most of us in the States, we don't feel like the people that we elect to represent our interests actually do in DC. The trust has been broken, and I'm afraid irreparably so. And if there's one message that I take away from what has happened in Russia, not just over the past year and a half, but over the past week, in a time of crisis like that, how the people rallied behind their president, put their trust and their faith in their government, which they already trust. I mean, it's astonishing to compare between Russia and the United States, and probably Canada too, how much the people of Russia trust their leader, trust their government. And over here, nobody trusts the damn thing our government says, because they've been caught lying so many times that trust is broken.
Well, think about it. Ever since Obama, nothing has been accomplished in the United States. You have Democrats leading one house, Republicans leading another. They fight, they don't accomplish anything. Next election, they swap it, they fight, they don't accomplish anything. You don't see that here.
Governments have to earn trust. And, I make this argument, which is not popular with a lot of my fellow Americans. I say that we should get rid of term limits. This is the time when everyone's crying for term limits. They want more term limits on Congress, because we've got all these old people like Dianne Feinstein and Nancy Pelosi in power, and they shouldn't be. But to me, I think term limits were a mistake. When we passed the 22nd Amendment in 1947, that was to prevent another FDR. And FDR was elected by an overwhelming majority of the voters 4 times. President Putin in Russia has had more than 20 years now in power. He's coming up on almost 25 years in power, off and on. I know he took a few years off because of the Constitution there and then came back, but the Constitution of Russia has been amended. So now next year he can run again. He'll probably win again. And he may be in power for another 20 more years. And I would argue that that's actually good for the country, not bad for the country. Here in the States, we can't have a president serve more than 2 terms since we passed the 22nd Amendment. I think that only empowers the deep state, the permanent government. While we change leaders every 4 to 8 years, they continue to run the show. I would argue that a strong leader like Russia has, who's in power for a long period of time by the will of the people, the overwhelming majority of the people keep reelecting him and clearly want him to run the country. I kind of wish we would go back to doing that and just get rid of the 22nd Amendment. And as far as old folks like Joe Biden, who should clearly not be in office, I would suggest to my fellow Americans that we amend the Constitution and put an age limit. We have an age minimum, right? You have to be a certain age to run for Congress or for president, but there's nothing in the Constitution about a maximum age. Seems to me we could arrive at a maximum age, 65, 70, 72, whatever number we pick, and just say, if you're over that age, you must retire. It's forced retirement, just like federal employees. Most federal employees are forced to retire at 65. but that's not true for members of Congress or appointed positions. That's why Dr. Anthony Fauci got to stay in his job till he was almost 90. And that's why Joe Biden is president.
And treat them like everybody else, all their citizens get treated. When they're out of office, quit paying them.
That too. I think it's ridiculous. And the pensions they get are huge. Fauci got to retire with a nice fat pension after everything he did. No accountability.
The other thing that I see the United States and Canada, other Western countries would have to do is they have to give power to the leader to actually run the country. Right. The military industrial complex running the presidency has not worked for a long time. When Putin says, Shoigu, you will do this, he will do it. If he talks to Sergei Aksionov and says, I gave you 8 billion rubles last year to build new roads, where are they? They react. So he has the power to run the country. U.S. president doesn't.
No. I think it's pretty obvious that the president has very little power. Now, the Constitution gives the president and the executive branch a great deal of power. But ever since November 22nd, 1963, I think every president has understood, or they are made to understand very quickly, who really runs things. And it's not the president.
Not them,
Yeah, it's not them. I think they made that real clear in Dallas in 1963. Don't you?
Yep.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement on that. So, Kevin, tell our audience where they can find you so they can follow you.
Well, one of the places you can find me is over there on the screen. My green screen pointing isn't so great. Infowars.press. No, I am not related. Or American Crimea on YouTube. So those are the best places to catch me.
Well, I'm so glad that you stayed up late and made time for us again. We love having you on Maverick News, and thank you for the update and the intel, the info. And I think you're right. Your analysis so far is the most logical, the most reasoned, dispassionate, and just the facts, ma'am. And that's what I appreciate about you. So thanks again, brother.
I'm just reporting what I see. So,
well, greatly appreciated.
Thank you both for inviting me on again. And it's always a pleasure. Reach out anytime. I'm glad to stay up with you guys.
Fantastic. We will have you back. That's for sure, Seal. Be able to find Kevin here too. Again, appreciate it very much, Kevin. It's been great.
Hope you get some sleep.
Yeah, I will.
Kevin.
All right.
Bye.
See you, my friend. Take care.
Bye now.
Okay, so are we ready to move on and do this new thing?
I think so. Yeah. I was looking for our guest, but I see him backstage, but I don't see his camera.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
That's strange.
He's kind of incognito in darkness there.
Device is not connected. Looks like he's having some technical difficulties. We'll give Paul a few minutes to set up his webcam and get that connected. I think he's having a little trouble there. But so tell me about, I missed the part of the show today. What happened at Parliament Hill with the flags? Did they get arrested?
No. So no video shot. So I wasn't sure what happened, but just a short time ago, I did phone Adrian, the realist, and I asked him, and I had him on the phone and people could hear. And he tells us that 31 flags were confiscated as his supporters tried to go through the checkpoints. 31 flags confiscated. One flag was allowed to be carried on to Parliament Hill. And then in a very discreet area, in a sort of a low profile ceremony, tucked away someplace, he says that a flag was risen on Parliament Hill in a respectful manner. While parliamentary police and others or security personnel looked on, but no video was shot because it's a First Nations ceremony.
I told
what-
you. I
that's what
told
he
you that's what was going to happen. I was like, dude, two things are going to happen. You're going to get your flags confiscated immediately. And boom, they did. And two, you're probably going to get arrested or you're going to leave. So it sounds like he chose not to go to jail today.
Yeah, well, he wasn't even there. I mean, he's out in Alberta.
Oh, I thought he was leading.
No, he's
this
not even
whole-
there. There
Oh.
are supporters like that.
It's disturbing, though, that there were 31 of these damn flags.
Yeah, well, to me, I don't like them. Obviously,
Nope.
I disagree with the use of the swastika. I don't agree with some of the things that Adrian said on the program last night, especially his references to Jews owning the media and controlling the economy and enslaving us. I don't agree with that. This is all, I would say, very anti-Semitic propaganda that is and very Nazi-like, and I don't like it. It's
I find
dangerous
it
talk.
odious.
Yeah.
To quote our friend Scott Ritter, that's his favorite word is odious. It smells. Not a fan.
Adrian says that this is a First Nations symbol that was used by Native Americans before the Nazis appropriated it and turned the symbol into something evil. Nevertheless, you can't dismiss
Can't change history. It is what it
the
is.
Nazis did, and to normalize its use in our society today, I think is extremely dangerous. And then you combine that with even just what he was saying. If you really listen to what he's saying, this is an anti-Semitic narrative that he is engaging in. It's absolutely steeped in prejudice. And in my view, these are words of hate. Now, as I've said, I support free speech and freedom of expression. It doesn't mean that I support what he's doing, but I will support anybody's right to engage in even hateful expression, because I think the best way to combat that is with better arguments, better information, and truth. But the government, they'd rather just confiscate the flags, right?
Right.
I'd rather have it out in the open where we can have a discussion about it rather than force it underground where it's beneath the surface. And this is what has led to me being so surprised by the reaction that I've had, for the past 6 months with regard to this issue. I bring it up and I'm thinking, well, if I just talk about it, then people will understand that this isn't a good thing and we can just address it and take care of the problem. But
that's what you did last night. That was a great conversation that you guys had.
Again, and
then you got attacked for it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
The pro-Nazi, pro-swastika, you just don't understand your history brigade was out, the trolls rode in full force and they came down hard. And I'm like, Rick is a jerk. And Rick, just whatever insult they can throw at me.
How dare you make us look bad with our swastika flag?
Yeah, how dare you actually
You're doing a pretty good job of that yourself,
said.
buddy.
It's like,
it's not like we have to make you look bad. You're the guy with the swastika flag. I mean,
no, I understand Adrian's perspective and I respect him. He's not my enemy. But what he is doing, I believe, is very misguided. It is dividing people. It's very divisive. It is a symbol that I think is very dangerous. So I absolutely disagree with him. I understand that Native Americans used that symbol, as have other cultures around the world throughout history. But you cannot just select pieces of history to fit your agenda or your objective and just dismiss everything that happened in Nazi Germany and say, well, that doesn't count. We get to use the symbol because it was ours first. So all of this other history doesn't matter. Well, that's not true.
Look, I guarantee you that most people out there, I'd say 99.9% of people when they see a swastika flag, they ain't thinking about Native Americans.
Yeah.
The first thought that comes to their mind is Nazi Germany, and it's always going to be Nazi Germany. And I'm sorry that the Nazis stole you and appropriated your symbol. My question to you and your followers is, why are you appropriating Nazi ideology?
And that's the problem too. It isn't just the symbol.
Not just
if
the
you
flag.
really listen to what he said,
I heard it.
There is Nazi ideology. There's anti-Semitic rhetoric in what he was saying last night. I mean, straight up.
Straight up.
And he's been accused of it before, and he's not afraid to say it.
It's his own words.
He just talks about it openly. He has an issue with Jewish people. Well,
and gay people.
And gay people.
You know, and communists. And you know who else had an issue with communists? Hitler. That was the whole ideology behind the Ukrainian nationalists. That's what drove the Nazis. They were not torturing and arresting and imprisoning and murdering Jews because of their faith. They were doing it because of their race and most importantly, their politics. Because in Eastern Europe, most Jews were communists in Russia in those years.
The issue at hand here is what's happening in Canada right now, and it's an aberration, a new version of this. I would say a fascistic, authoritarian, coercive ideology. I think it's extremely dangerous. And while this all happening while other people are trying to, I think, peacefully unite a movement.
But this guy openly says that he wants to overthrow the government. So then he's surprised.
Well, no.
He said that
I wouldn't
yesterday.
Say, careful.
and then he's surprised that the government wasn't happy to see them coming.
I don't want to put words in his mouth.
I heard him say it.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's true.
I mean, that's exactly what he said. He's like, this government, we're going to overthrow the government.
Yes, you're accurate.
And then he's like surprised that the government's, waiting for him when he comes to Parliament Hill. And
well, yeah, because everything he's
checking
doing
him for weapons and stuff.
And other people around him, what they're doing does pose an existential threat to the government. It's true, because they want to dismantle, they don't want to just get rid of Trudeau. They want to dismantle the entire system and start with something brand new. And he's acknowledged that.
Now, I have not heard him say the things that Christopher James and his clan say about hanging Trudeau.
Hasn't said that.
With a rope around the neck. But it's basically, look, a violent overthrow of the government is what he's advocating, along with.
Well, he will argue in public that he's not about the violence.
And then he'll turn around and say something like, "We need to overthrow the government." So,
well, I mean, at least
going to overthrow the government
you do
with
the
flowers,
math, right?
I
Like,
mean,
if you're going to challenge the government and tear down the entire system, chances are the government's not going to like that very much. So, where does that lead? You figure it out.
And you're going to jail.
Mm-hmm.
You're just going to go to jail.
Oh yeah, that's going to happen. Yeah,
that's how that works.
Now, that being said, nobody was arrested today.
Right.
And that's because, if this went down the way that Adrian said it did, and, I don't see why it didn't. I think that the way he described it, probably it's entirely possible that is the way that it happened. I couldn't see it. I wasn't there. So I have to take him at his word, I guess, unless somebody else, another witness, he saw something else, but there's no video of it. But nobody arrested. But yeah, I mean, you keep pushing the government like that, and they're going to push back. If it's just that simple. Mm-hmm. You can only push a government so far, and they're not going to give up their power.
Well, and as Cindy says in our chat, and she's probably correct. She says it's because the government won't arrest natives.
That's one of the things that I was trying to get to, and before my mind kind of went down another path. But that is very true, because it becomes more complicated, especially today. You see, when you have First Nations peoples, and I'm not exactly sure who was there, but when they walk onto Parliament Hill and basically assert sovereignty and say that the parliament buildings are sitting on unceded territory, what that means is they're saying that this land belongs to First Nations. And so you have no authority over us at all. So if police challenge them,
And the government says, "Oh yeah,
right? If
you
they
wanna bet?"
challenge that, then they're going to end up in court with some sort of a constitutional court case on their hands where land claims and treaties come into play. And I think that police, generally speaking, like to try to avoid that sort of complication for the government. So they do give First Nations a lot of latitude. And I can also tell you that I don't think there's any question that, well, hang on, I shouldn't say there's no question. I think that there might be some real validity to the land claims on Parliament Hill that I think especially the Algonquin Nation might come forward with if at some point, because I've seen a lot of history surrounding that. And there's been open discussions about it. The government itself has acknowledged some of that. So yeah, when First Nations peoples go up to Parliament Hill or in a lot of other places in this country and they say this land is ours, that's it. It really does hold water. It's very true. And that's why these are over 600 nations within a nation. They have sovereignty and they are able to govern themselves. So you have First Nations go up against police or the military, and what you're really talking about is an international incident. It's not just the cops dealing with a citizen. It's a different thing altogether.
Right. Well, that's, it's all very fascinating to me. What fascinates me most, Rick, to be honest, is Native American Nazis.
I know it's hard for people to wrap their heads around that.
Twist.
Because people have been conditioned to think that only white people can be bigots or Nazis or prejudice or, anti-Semitic. That's not true. Prejudice comes in all shapes, sizes, and colors. So it's like, no, sorry, you don't have to be white to be a dickhead.
That's right.
I'm sorry, I don't think Adrian's actually a dickhead. It's not, I wasn't directing that at Adrian. He's not, this is the very strange thing. You would think that Adrian and I would be like, hate each other. I don't hate him at all. I actually kind of like him. I like talking to him. I don't agree with much of anything that he's saying. I'm really opposed to him. I just think he's very misguided.
Well, you heard him talk about his life story a little bit, and he had a troubled past with his family and his father. And listening to all that yesterday, I realized that this man doesn't need power, political power. He needs therapy.
Well, perhaps.
That's just my take.
I don't know. I mean, I just have to say, I do respect him. I think he's just very, very misguided. This is the wrong approach if you want to achieve anything politically in this country. It's the wrong approach if you want to bring people together. It's the wrong path because it's a dark path. It may seem like on the surface, like you're going to liberate people in some way by sharing the truth, but this is not truth. This is a very, very dark path. This takes you to a dangerous place where you're falling into a trap again of demonizing, dehumanizing a particular group of people again, pitting your people against a group of people, in this case, again, the Jews. And he openly states it. I then combine that with the symbol, and I mean, it's just, we're already halfway down the road and we've barely gotten started. So I really take issue with this. It's a hard no for me all the way across the board. No. Until we get to the free speech. And then I'm like, okay, you can say what you want to say, but I don't agree with you.
Well, do you remember the movie, The Blues Brothers?
Yeah.
Yeah. You remember the scene where the Illinois Nazis are out having their little parade and they're in the way. The Blues Brothers are just trying to get across the bridge, and these stupid Nazis are out there having their little march, and they had to stop traffic, right? The cops like, oh, you can't drive through here. You have to wait until the Illinois Nazis are done with their little parade. Yeah. And that was all a joke about the Skokie case, the famous Skokie case that the ACLU defended the American Nazi Party for their right to march and fly their flags and do all of that. It was a big case in 1978, 79. So the Blues Brothers came out about that time. And a lot of people who watched the movie today don't understand that the joke was about a famous legal case, the Skokie case.
Sure.
So I kind of get what Adrian's trying to do up there. He's trying to make this Canada's Skokie case, I guess. But I'm with Jake and Elwood. I hate Illinois Nazis, and I'm not a fan of Canadian Nazis.
Well,
either,
I don't
be
want to hate
honest.
on Adrian. I don't want to go to war with Adrian. I don't even really want to fight. Like, I don't want to fight with him. I want to have discussions. I want to have discussions like we had last night.
Well, let's have a discussion with our guest. He's been
yeah,
sitting
we're gonna
backstage for
do that.
15 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, again, I really want to reinforce this. Adrian is not my enemy, nor are the people who are attacking me in the chat over the last 24 hours.
Well, you knew
they're
that
not
was
my
coming.
enemies. They might think that they need to be my enemy, but you're not my enemies. Okay. I believe in freedom. I believe in freedom of speech. I disagree on this issue. And I think the only constructive, positive way forward is to engage in discussion on these issues. And there, in that way, I think we might all be able to resolve these things in the long run.
Well, you did the right thing.
That's it.
I mean, you facilitated an open, fair, free discussion, and I think that discussion needs to be had. You know, and of course, you knew you'd be attacked. You'd be attacked on both sides. There'd be people coming to you saying, "Rick, how can you platform a Nazi?" And then there's other people coming to you saying, "He's not a Nazi. You don't understand your history." You know, blah blah blah. So you're going to get attacked no matter what you do. But the point is, it was courageous that you did that show last night, and I'm glad you did.
Well, I appreciate those words, Laurie, because I'll tell you, it's anytime I deal with this, it's a no-win situation for me. It's an absolute lose.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah. Nobody's going to like a show like that.
Not
right?
really.
No
Nope.
matter what. And you can't make anybody happy when you do a controversial topic like that.
If you want to know how to not build, if you want to know how to destroy a YouTube channel, just
but
come
you know
talk
what?
to me. I'll show you.
You actually had a big audience for that show last night.
Yeah, for one night.
A lot of people, even though they hated the subject matter, they watched.
They did, yeah.
You know,
but
people love controversy, I guess.
But now but in the long run, it's not good. But nevertheless, I will continue to do that because these are conversations that have to be had. I don't know of anybody, very few other people. I don't know of anybody really that's doing what I'm doing. Nobody's as crazy as I am.
Where do you find these people, Rick Walker?
Well, I appreciate
You had a
Adrian
couple
coming
of them
on
this week.
and having the discussion. Yeah. It's brave of him to come on and do it as well.
I guess they find you, right?
I'll tell you, I'm sure he got pushback as well, and a lot of people are saying, "What are you talking to that Rick Walker guy for?"
I'm sure.
Blah, blah, blah. Well, no, so thank you, Adrian, for coming on and having the courage to talk to me too, man. And that's why, again, there's a big part of him that I actually like, and that's one of the reasons why, right there.
Well, you know, there's somebody I really like who's going to be joining us tonight for the episode 5 of Strange Bedfellows. Someone who's been a friend of mine literally since I was a kid. And boy, we've got a lot of cool stuff to talk about. So I hope you guys will stick around. And we're going to take a quick break, right? Come back and start this new show here on the Maverick News Channel. Or rather, we could say a return to the Maverick News Channel because Strange Bedfellows started right here before we moved over to Scott Ritter's channel for a month. While Scott was away in Russia, we kind of kept his time slot warm, and now we're back on the Maverick News Channel. Got an amazing show for you guys tonight. We're going to have a friendly debate between a big old Kennedy supporter like me and the biggest MAGA supporter that I know, Paul Davies. We're going to have a cage match and see between RFK Jr. and Trump who would win. We're going to have it out tonight on
Mega
Strange
Man.
Mega Man.
Yeah, the ultimate Trump supporter.
He is, folks, and I'm not joking. We'll show you why when we come back.
Okay, so I'm going to run a little promo, then we're going to run the intro to this new show. Stay tuned, folks. Straight ahead, Strange Bedfellows.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind.
In a universe full of ideas, we draw lightness from the dark to a place where opposites attract. Right meets left, positive touches negative, sparking an explosion of truth. Because politics makes strange bedfellows.
That's a sweet new intro. All right. Welcome to Strange Bedfellows. Welcome, everybody. Obviously, you know me. I'm Lori Spencer, and you know Rick very well. And the idea of the show, if you didn't get a chance to catch our first 4 episodes over on the Scott Ritter channel, the idea of this show is to bring people together who would normally be on opposite sides of the political fence, who might otherwise be fighting with each other, and get them together and actually find some points of agreement. Sometimes we find when we sit down and talk to someone who we think is our enemy or our opposite, that we agree more than we disagree. So tonight, I wanted to bring in a very, very dear friend of mine. Hey, Paul.
Hey.
Folks, I want you to meet my dear friend, Paul Davies, who's right here in Oklahoma with me. And Paul is, man, what a great life story he's had. You're going to enjoy getting to know him. I should preface this conversation by saying I've known Paul for 40 years.
About probably maybe longer than that.
Probably even longer than that. 40 years is a conservative
Long time,
estimate.
yeah.
And we've been the best of friends, and we still are. And our politics sometimes takes us in completely opposite directions, but we never let that get in the way of our friendship. And Paul and I have the greatest conversations about politics and some really passionate debates. And then we hug and we're friends at the end, and it's awesome. And Paul is the, he's the precinct chair for your local Republican Party, right, Paul?
That's right. Yeah, I am.
And what's the county where you live?
It would be McLean County.
McLean County.
In Newcastle.
That's right. That's right. And he is the biggest Trump fan I've ever met. And I've known some big Trump fans, but when I tell you that Paul is a big Trump fan, we're going to show you some examples of that.
Which I have to actually get queued up here because I had all that stuff set, but because there was this gap in time, it's disappeared out of my.
I thought it might, so I just resent it to you, Rick. It's a Facebook video of Paul's house. Now, Paul's house, folks, he lives out in the country in the town of Newcastle, which is a pretty rural area. And Paul has his whole house and his garage like dolled up with all the coolest Trump memorabilia. If you're a Trump fan out there, you would not believe the collection that this guy has. And so while Rick's trying to find it, would you tell us, Paul, a little bit about how you fell in love with Donald Trump and how long you've been supporting Donald Trump?
Well, I mean, honestly, before he ran, I thought he was an arrogant asshole. Can I say asshole?
You can say whatever you want.
I thought he was an arrogant asshole. I couldn't stand him. Personally, I couldn't stand him. Never watched The Apprentice ever. And when he announced he was running, I was like everybody else, yeah, whatever, dude. Like,
really?
Joke. And the more he talked about what he stood for, America First really rang with me. And I really resonated with it. And the more he talked, the more I liked him. And I know he's a bully, but sometimes you need a bully in there to get things done. But I just listened to him more and more, and I started liking him a lot more. And I became a super mega fan, I guess.
And that was like when he first ran and back in 2015?
2015, yeah.
Yeah. Was it automatic for you? Like when he came down the escalator and made that first speech, did he just grab you or?
No, like everyone else, I thought it was a joke. Like, Ross Perot running. Yeah, good luck.
Mm.
And then he started talking about things, the border and other things, and I really liked him. I liked the fact that he was not part of the inside government, that he was an outsider. I did like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things I liked about him. I should say that I supported Trump in
Yeah.
2016,
I was gonna
2015, 2016.
Yeah, I was gonna say our politics were pretty much the same there for a little while.
That's right. And I liked him because he was an outsider, because he wasn't a politician, and because he was funny, and because he liked to break stuff.
Yeah.
The guy promised he was going to drain the swamp, and I said, "Heck yeah!" And he said, "I love WikiLeaks," and I said, "Heck yeah," because I've been a supporter of WikiLeaks since the very beginning of WikiLeaks, and I loved that. He said these things. Unfortunately, though, he lost me once he got into the White House and had Julian Assange arrested and is prosecuting him under the Espionage Act and never pardoned him, even though he was given many opportunities to do so. He lost me right off the bat when he, said that he would free the JFK files, right? He was going to
Right.
release all those still classified secret files about the Kennedy assassination. And then he got a lot of pressure from the FBI and the CIA, and he backed off. And he didn't do it. And he did that twice. Twice he kicked the can down the road.
Yeah.
There were a lot of reasons why Trump lost my support while he was president.
I understand that. Yeah.
I'm sure you do. And I know you do because we've talked about it
We've
privately.
talked about it. Yeah.
Yeah. But, I really wanted to show everybody just how serious you are about your Trump fanboyism. Folks, this is Paul Davies' bathroom. Take a look.
And I was always told to pick a side, and I haven't figured it out yet. So.
Check it out. This is the coolest. Every time I go over to Paul's house, I want to use this bathroom. This is the mega bathroom.
This is the Trump throne room.
All you need is a golden toilet, my man.
That's right. That's all I need.
Look at that.
It's out of control.
I love it. And how long have you been putting this thing together? Has this been a project for several years?
I had the Oklahoma City Thunder up there, and they kind of made me mad, so I took all that down. And about 3 years ago, I started putting Trump up there.
Check it out. I mean, Trump everything.
Don't mind that man in the mirror.
Where do you even get like a Trump commode lid cover thing?
Amazing. Amazon is amazing. You can find just about everything on there.
Wow. You found that on Amazon?
Right.
I thought you custom made that.
No, I'm not that
And
good.
it looked like you had are those autographed pictures of Trump on the wall?
No, one was his inauguration letter. And the other one was one I made with him with his signature. The one on the left is Rush Limbaugh. That is the signature.
Yeah, I thought that was Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah, it was.
And you've been a Rush fan for as long as I can remember.
Since he got on the air. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I want to go back in time to, have you been a Republican all of your life? Always been a conservative?
At first I think it was, how you're like when your dad, you're trying to be the opposite.
Yep.
He liked the Pittsburgh Steelers, so I had to like the Dallas Cowboys. He was a Democrat, so I had to be a Republican. And that kind of drove me. I used to say, we should vote for Nixon again. He'd just shut up.
You were a rebel Republican.
I was pretty much an anti-government rebel Republican. I just didn't know it.
That's right. Well, I remember back in the 80s that, of course, you supported Ronald Reagan wholeheartedly then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my politics was kind of middle of the road back then. And now that I see how bad the government is, there's no middle of the road anymore, period.
That's right. That's right. And I guess that's why you're sticking with Trump, right? Because he's going to drain the swamp this time?
I know Trump, he was in. See, people talk about stuff all the time, and then they get in there, and they change. And he did change a few things, but for the most part, he did what he said he was going to do. I think he got in there, and he realized he was over his head. Yeah. I'm going to have to hire some of these government flunkies to know what I'm doing. And I think that's why he did that. And I think he got some bad advice on not firing who he should have fired earlier. But I just think that the anti-government thing is my thing. I just, I didn't, like I said, I didn't realize how bad the government was till he took it over. Now, that's
Right.
the one thing I love about Trump. He did expose how bad it was.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I liked about him too. And I sometimes think that Trump was just kind of like some truth accidentally fell out of his mouth, or sometimes he told more truth than his advisors
Yeah.
wanted him to tell. And I don't know if he meant to do that or if it just kind of slipped out. But sometimes Trump was remarkably honest. with it.
He was honest to a fault. He should have. There's a
Right.
lot of times he'd say something, or tweet something, and be like, "Oh, shut up! Don't do that. Just be quiet and don't be arrogant." And the guy
Right.
was a jerk. He was an ass, but I love him. To me, he was a great president. Like I said, everybody in Europe feared him. They didn't know what he was going to do. He was a maverick. He was a wild card, so they didn't mess with him because they had no idea. Joe Biden, they know what he is.
Yeah.
So I think that's the big difference.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, that may be how he managed to smooth things over with North Korea. I did really like what he did with North Korea when he made the trip over there. First American president since the Korean War to actually go to the demilitarized zone, and to shake the hand of the North Korean leader.
Yeah, I think that's what he does best. He'll sit there and threaten you with whatever he threatens you, then turn
Yeah,
around and be your
after he
friend.
threatened him for
Yeah.
months on Twitter and
Yeah,
calling him
and then-
Rocket Man, and I've got a bigger rocket than you do.
It's funny
and-
when he met him. Did you know he gave him a copy of Rocket Man? The
No.
song, yeah, he did.
The song?
Yeah, and
I love
he didn't
that.
know what it was about. He had no idea. I guess he didn't hear that Rocket Man before, but yeah, it's funny.
Kim had never heard the song Rocket Man. huh?
Apparently, he had no idea what it's about. I don't know.
Wow.
So
That's awesome.
that's funny.
Well, there was hope that, we could maybe finally have peace on the Korean Peninsula. And of course, John Bolton and
Oh,
Mike
God.
Pompeo and those around Trump quickly sabotaged any hopes for that
Definitely,
after his
yeah.
North Korean trip.
Yeah, he had some bad advisors. I'm going to say that.
And who
I just-
hired those bad advisors?
I
Paul?
know, but I think he had bad political advice too. I don't think he knew what he was doing when he got in there. And obviously, how would you know? You got so much to do. Pretty much, it was probably overwhelming, and he probably just did what some of his advisors told him to do. Hey, you need some insiders to know the system. You can't hire a bunch of outsiders. They don't know how to work the system.
Can't drain the swamp without hiring the swamp? Is that the
well,
logic?
some of the swamp that you can trust. The other trust, I mean, I don't know what you can trust, though. That's the thing. Who do you trust in the swamp? I don't know. Nobody.
Nobody. And that was my complaint about Trump. My critique was that he put his trust in all the wrong people. I thought he was smarter than that.
Yeah. Well, I think he's pretty smart, but politically, I think he learned a lot.
He is.
And I don't know. To me, he's done 4 years. He did a great job. Best president I've known in my lifetime. To me, anyway. Low unemployment. Everything was great. COVID hit. Boom, everything went to hell.
Right.
And that screwed his election up. And there's like 100 Republicans trying to run now, which is good for Trump. The better for him. They'll take away the votes of everybody else. But I know him. I would vote for him again just because I know he can do the job. DeSantis, I like him, but I don't think he's ready for prime time yet. I really don't.
In your precinct, I'm curious, since you talk to other Republicans, here in Oklahoma, I know this is Trump country. I
It
would
is.
think that support for Trump's reelection is huge. But are you seeing much support for any of the other Republican candidates that are in this race so far?
No. I mean, I talked to a few people. First of all, the street I live in, there's probably 10. We live on a runway. There's probably 10 houses here. Everyone but one person is a Republican. Everyone likes Trump. So it's hard to say because I really don't talk to anybody that don't like Trump,
Right.
I'm sure there are, but this is Oklahoma in a very red district in a very red county. So It's hard to say because there's not very many Democrats here. I'm sure there are. I just don't know 'em.
You'd have to look pretty hard to find them
You
around
you
here,
really
though.
would. You'd have to turn a few stones.
Yeah, this is a very red state. And yet, when I was growing up, when you were growing up, we were still a blue state for
Yeah.
most of the 20th
Yeah.
century. Oklahoma was a strongly Democrat state back in the years of President Kennedy, of
Mhm.
course, and in the 1960s, Oklahoma was solidly Democrat, and that all
Right.
changed. Really started to change during the Carter administration around the midterms of 78 and then the big election of 1980 when the whole
Yeah.
country went red. That's
Pretty
when
much.
Texas and Oklahoma flipped or started to,
And I think they went
you
more
know.
conservative, and they
Yeah.
just went more conservative as it went along.
Mhm,
I think you're
mhm.
right.
Yeah. And so I think that Trump certainly is gonna win Oklahoma
Oh,
handily
yeah. I think he
in
yeah.
next year's election.
I mean,
Um
did you know that Oklahoma, I could be wrong, but my facts, I believe, what I've read is that, and if it's on the internet, it's right, correct? It's not wrong.
That's right.
That
Absolutely. Every time.
Oklahoma has not, there hasn't been one blue county in Oklahoma since 2000. Every presidential election has been, every county's been red. So
All
I think
77
that's, yeah,
counties.
I think
Yeah.
that's why we're the reddest state in the union.
That's right.
Every
So
county.
I have to ask you, what are your thoughts about my guy, Robert F.
Well,
Kennedy Jr.?
I'll
I even
say
wore my shirt today so we could do battle.
I will say the guy's got some hellacious abs. He can do some push-ups.
Yeah, he's
I
got
mean,
some hellacious cojones too
I,
to
w-
say
I
the things that he's
wish, I wish
saying.
I wish I looked as good as him at his age that I do at my age right now. Just saying. I mean, I like him. I'll be honest with you. I haven't heard a lot from him because the media don't cover him. He's
Mm.
invisible. He's he's Cloud Range. He doesn't exist.
That's
But
right.
from what I've seen of him, I like him. I know I like his stance on shots, COVID, and his policies. The thing is, people think he's right. He's not. He was what a Democrat was 30 years ago.
That's right.
The blue dog Democrats. That's what he is. The Democrats have gone so left that they seem he's right, and he's not. He's still a centralist Democrat.
Mhm.
30 years ago, he would have been a moderate Democrat. So maybe left, maybe right even, but
That's right.
he'd been a normal Democrat.
Mhm.
But
And he's not nearly as liberal as his uncle Ted
oh
Kennedy.
no, oh
You know,
no, no
Teddy was
way.
a pretty far left liberal, but Bobby, he's
Socialized, yeah.
always been more conservative. I mean, he has he's written quite a bit about Senator Barry Goldwater. He liked Goldwater a lot. He liked the Reagans a lot. He is, like you said, very centrist. Definitely not
Yeah,
a far left liberal. I mean, he's
right.
liberal on some things.
No,
But
a far
yeah,
left. Yeah, the Democrats of today would not get elected 30 years ago. There's no way
Mm.
they wouldn't have.
If John F. Kennedy were here today, as I often say, he'd have to be a Republican
He would.
or a
He really would,
libertarian,
because he wouldn't have got voted in. Yeah, and
not
that's
in the
sad because
Democratic Party.
he was a great president, and that's
Yeah.
sad. That I mean, even Clinton couldn't stand the guy, but he was a good president. He was pretty good. I
Mhm.
got to say that as a Republican and a Democrat, I didn't vote for him,
Compared to
but
the
I voted.
Democrats of today,
Yeah,
Bill Clinton looks
he
at
was
least sane. He didn't put across policies that were just plain crazy.
well. At least he worked with the Republicans to get something going. It
That
wasn't.
too.
It
That
wasn't
too.
just you or me, black and white. There's no middle, which is what I hate
Yeah.
today. There's just no middle. It's funny that the independents, there's 5% of the population basically that determines the presidential election. That's it. Those independents. Democrats are going to vote Democrats, Republicans are going to vote Republican. It doesn't matter how bad the economy is and what a joke Biden is, they're still going to vote for him because he's a Democrat.
Mhm.
And that's sad.
It
You know,
is.
the days of Reagan when he won 49 states, you'll never ever see that again. I'm telling you.
No, I don't think we'll ever see a landslide like that
No,
again. Our country's just too
it's
divided.
too divided. And
Everything's too partisan now.
I think it's getting worse. I don't see it getting any better.
It
But
is
people, yeah,
astonishing, isn't it, that Democrats are going to go vote for Joe Biden
I know.
anyway, despite
As
the fact
bad
that
as
he's
he is.
visibly unwell. He's not in his
And
right mind. He's not healthy. And they're
yeah,
going to
maybe the worst
not only
president I've seen. I don't know. That's my opinion,
definitely the
but yeah.
worst. And I remember the Carter years. So do
Yeah,
you.
I thought that was bad. Now I'm thinking I want the Carter years.
Now, yeah, the Carter years look pretty good by
We went-
comparison
We
now
went from a great economy with Trump, then we went to this.
to this.
This is a joke.
Just like that. I mean,
Just
that's why
like
they call Joe the quicker fucker
Yeah.
upper because
as soon as he got in office, he started writing 100 or so things on his desk and screwed everything up that Trump did. He screwed up things that Trump did just because he was a jerk because Trump did it.
That's all.
Knowing Trump was right. He just did it to get Trump out of there.
That's right.
So
just to undo every Trump
Right.
policy just because it was a Trump
And-
policy, even
and
though
look-
it was a
yeah.
good policy.
And look what happened.
And look what's happening at our border after
The
he got rid
border.
of Title 42. And I
Yep.
heard Trump say yesterday at his rally that he's going to bring back Title 42. And I'm thinking, well, how do you do that? Because that was a pandemic measure. And, you're going to have to find some new way to introduce that as
But
legislation. But
Couldn't they use Title One? I mean, there's title. They could use Title One and keep them out. I don't know why they're not. I don't know why it's all about Title 42.
right. Because
They've got means to keep them out. I mean, if they come in, arrest them, send them back. It's
it's not rocket science.
It's not that hard.
But
And
they
they're
just
trying
don't
to
have
say,
enough, they don't have enough personnel
No.
to process them all. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr., my guy, is the only Democrat who's gone down to the border. He's done the thing that Joe Biden wouldn't do.
I say
he went down there for himself at 2:00 in the morning, Paul, a couple of weeks back. I don't know if you saw it, but he went to the border. He stayed for a couple of days, couple of nights, because overnight in those hours between midnight and 6 a.m., that's when the cartels are really making their moves.
Yeah.
So that's when you have to be there. You don't go to the border and do a quick photo op in the afternoon
Right.
because there's nothing happening.
Right.
So Bobby really got a good look at what's actually happening down there. And surprisingly, for a Democrat, he's going to be tough on the border. He says he wants to seal the border, close the border, which is further than Trump was even
Right.
willing to ever go.
I mean, even Obama was wanting to close the border, right? I mean, and he didn't believe in gay marriage, any of that until he flipped.
Right.
So even
That's
before
right.
Obama, the Democrats were all about securing the border, and now they are not. They want people to come in. Well, we know why they want them to come in, so they'll vote Democrat. But the funny thing is, don't realize most Hispanics are religious, and most of them now are turning Republican, so it might backfire on them, actually.
I predict it will backfire.
Yeah, eventually I think it will backfire on them.
Which might be why they're encouraging immigrants that are not from the Latin countries,
right?
Because they tend to be strongly Catholic and anti-abortion, and they're not going to vote for Democrats that are pro-abortion.
That's right.
So yeah, this time, I lived in Texas for 25 years in South Central Texas, and I know all about the border issue. It's been a huge problem for Texas now for more than a quarter of a century. But generally what we saw coming across our southern border were usually Mexicans,
right,
or people from the Latin American countries south of Mexico.
Right.
This time, since Joe Biden took over and sent a signal to the world that our border's wide open, everybody come on in, it's really kind of astonishing how
it is,
how the majority are not Hispanic. They're not from Mexico. They're not from
They're
Latin
from
America.
Russia, China, wherever, all over.
Haiti, ton of them coming
Iran,
in from Haiti.
Iraq, Haiti,
yeah,
all over. And and that's just the people they know about. There's
and Afghanistan, of course.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one coming through there, there's 100 more coming through that they don't catch. So it's out of hand. It's crazy. I mean, I became a citizen in '74. I'm from Wales.
Yeah, I forgot to tell people you're actually from Wales. You're
Yeah.
not a U.S. citizen.
Yeah, I find most Americans that are really, to me, most patriotic are a lot of people that weren't born here.
Yeah.
But I became a citizen in '74, and it took me to get my citizen papers. I had to go through 4 years of hell because I
4
wanted to get a
years.
passport. I was
Wow.
like, why don't I just cross the border? I can do it for free.
Yeah.
Would have been
Yeah.
easier. So it's crazy. It's
Isn't
insane.
it? And that'll really make you angry if you
It
are
does.
an immigrant who came in legally and you did everything the right way, jumped through
Yep.
all the hoops, paid all the fines, went to court, did the
I
whole 9 yards.
Had to
like
take
you
the
did.
test, do the allegiance, everything. Yeah.
That's right.
And now
That's
they're just
right.
letting them in, giving free phones, free housing, kicking the veterans out so they can put them in there.
Free health care.
Free health care, which most
Mhm.
Americans don't even have.
That's
They're
right.
basically getting more things than we get from the government. And
Totally.
that sucks.
Yeah, and free travel. I mean, when
Free yeah.
what Bobby Kennedy said when he was at the border was he watched the process. He watched the border patrol, and he said, you know, our border patrol is supposed to be protecting the border, but instead we've got our border patrol agents and our Texas Rangers having to process. They're basically doing administrative tasks.
Right.
They're processing the immigrant when they come across. You know, they get them. They get a phone and they say, do you know anybody in the United States? If the migrant says, yes, I know so-and-so, the Border Patrol will call that individual. And if they can get them on the phone and say, will you give this person a home until their court date comes up? If the person says yes, then the Border Patrol buys them a airline ticket or a bus ticket to go wherever that person is who's going to be sponsoring them, basically. And say, okay, I'm going to Chicago because I've got a friend in Chicago. And that's all it takes is one phone call to your friend in whatever city. And you're in like Flynn, and your court date isn't for 7 years.
Yeah, if I broke the law, I'd be in
7
jail.
years.
I'm just saying. You know,
No
I broke the
kidding.
law, I'd be in jail, prisons.
Yeah.
They're breaking the law and they're just giving them stuff free. I mean, is that what it takes?
Yeah, literally. Here's a free airplane ticket. Here's
Yeah.
free health care. Here's some, you know,
Here's
food
some spending
stamps.
money. Here's some
Here's spending
casino
money.
chips. Go for it. So yeah, it's insane.
It's lawlessness.
What they
Absolute
need,
lawlessness.
what they need to do is finish that wall all the way down and then put crocodiles in the Rio Grande. And that'll stop a lot of this.
Well, we got a lot of snakes down there. in the
Yeah,
Rio
I mean,
Grande, but
I don't
those
want
don't seem
nobody
to
hurt.
deter
I mean,
anybody.
I don't want nobody hurt. I understand. If I was down there, I'd want to do the same thing. I don't blame them. I blame
Hell,
the
I'm
government.
even more hardcore than that, Paul.
Yeah, really.
I'd put troops on the border.
Yeah, well, I
I've
believe
been saying that for years.
right. I think we should. I'm just saying I understand why they want to come here, but just because they want to come here doesn't mean they should come here.
Yeah, and every politician is afraid to be that hardcore and actually
Right.
put troops on the border.
Yep.
Governor Abbott won't. You know, I mean, he has sent some National Guard to the border, but you know, they don't have any shooting orders. And
I
I'm
know.
not saying anybody ought to get shot. I'm just saying,
It's kind of like when I
that
was
one shot in the air, one warning shot in the air would send those migrants scattering back the other direction.
It's kind of
And
like when
all
I
it takes
was
is one warning shot
one,
to say
and that was a
no
text.
more of this.
It's kind of like when I was in England. I was security police, you know, in the Air Force, and we guarded some nukes, and we were actually told you can shoot somebody, but make sure they're not a British national. So, are you? Yeah, I'm serious. That's what we were told. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I believe
Hey,
it.
sorry, where are you from? Let me talk to me so I can listen to your accent. Oh, you're British. Go, get into the nukes. It's crazy. It's insane.
I wanted to jump in for a second
Please
because
do.
Hey, Rick.
I was producing in the background there, and actually I ate an apple. But I want to know, can you do the Trump dance?
No.
Can't
Ain't
do
nobody wants. There's two things you never want to see me in. That's the Trump dance or a Speedo. Trust me, neither one of them. Mm-mm.
I've seen you in a lot worse than a
I know you
Speedo, Paul.
have. I know you have. I know you have.
I should probably take this opportunity to share a personal story about Paul and I's long friendship. You'd never believe where we met.
Mm-hmm. Rocky Horror Picture Show, baby.
The Rocky Horror Picture Show is where we first met.
Yep. Good times.
Let's do the time warp again.
And look at me now.
Yeah. So this is a true story. Back in the 1970s, Paul, who's a little older than me, was in the cast of our local Rocky Horror Picture Show. You know, on Saturday nights when they run Rocky Horror Picture Show, if you've ever been, there's a cast that's kind of acting out the movie in front of the screen, and they play the different characters and wear their costumes. And for many years, Paul Davies played Brad. You know, Brad and Janet, the wholesome, clean cut couple. Everyone calls him asshole. Paul was our Brad, and I was our Janet. I played, and everyone called me the bitch.
Right.
He's the asshole,
And you're the
I'm
bitch.
the bitch.
So I still wear that with honor. Tommy, shout out to Tommy. He's my other asshole I love. So
Oh yeah,
he did it
Tom,
after
he's
me.
watching.
Shout out to Mitch and Tommy. They were great. But
Hey,
yeah, I
guys.
mean, I still am friends with almost everybody there. It's something we had such a connection. You just don't lose that friendship.
It is
You don't.
amazing, isn't it? I
And
mean,
it
we all
doesn't
grew up
matter. Yeah.
together.
Doesn't matter your political views. We're always going to be friends, you know.
That's the point, and that's why I wanted to have you on the show tonight, Paul. Is we grew up in a very tight knit circle of friends that stayed friends for 40 years,
Mm-hmm.
and here we still are, still the best of friends. We have reunions every 10 years or so where we
Yeah.
get the old gang back together, the Rocky Horror Gang. There's a Facebook group where they stay in touch with each other, even though some have scattered all over the
Mm.
country and other parts of the world. But and back then nobody asked what your politics was.
No, it wasn't.
Nobody cared.
No, I didn't know till just a few years ago Mitch's politics. You just didn't
Yeah.
know.
Knew
And
the
the
guy
reason,
for
yeah,
40 years, never knew
and
his
no
politics.
idea. And
Never even came up in
until I
conversation.
started wearing this stuff, most people probably didn't know what I was. I'm sure they knew.
Mhm.
I'm not going to lie. They knew I was a conservative, but
You
like
weren't always a political animal, even back then, like I
no,
was,
yeah,
which is why we were such good friends because
yeah,
we both had such an interest in politics.
yeah, we
You know?
did. It's like Johnny Carson. You didn't know where he stood. You didn't know,
Yeah,
and that's what
yeah,
it should be about. I
I
mean,
agree.
I obviously don't fit that mold, but just
Mm,
because you're a Democrat don't mean I hate you. Still love
right,
you. It don't matter. It's
right.
what's inside, not the red or blue. Doesn't make any difference. You're not evil because you're red. You're not libtard because you're blue. There's in betweens. You know, like you're not a libtard. I love you.
I'm pretty reasonable for a
Yeah,
Democrat.
yeah. You
And
you are.
I was a libertarian for 27
I
years now.
know. I know you
When
were.
we first met back in the 80s, you were a Reagan Republican and I was a Ted Kennedy Democrat. I was
Right.
a Democrat then. I called myself a Kennedy Democrat because I loved JFK and RFK and I liked Senator Ted Kennedy's liberal policies. I was pretty liberal.
Yeah.
But in fact, I was very, very liberal back then. But we grow, we mature, and sometimes our views change. And as I
Yeah.
got
It does.
older, I became more conservative. I started
Yeah.
drifting more towards the right and the center. And of course, I left the Democratic Party in 1996. Actually, I left around 93 because of the Clintons. They ran me out of the Democratic Party. I thought they ruined everything that us Kennedy Democrats and old
Right.
school liberals believed in. I thought they ruined it.
They
So
did.
I left and then I found the Libertarian Party where I stayed for 27 years and only this year am I going to go change my voter registration back to Democrat for the first time in
What am I going to
30
do with you,
years.
Lori? What am I
I'm,
going to do
I'm
with
going to
you?
vote for a
Oh
Democrat.
no, no.
I know.
Well,
I
it's okay as
can't
long as
believe
it's
it.
not Biden. I respect that.
Definitely never, ever,
You
ever would
vote
I
for
vote for Joe Biden.
Kennedy, I'm behind you. That's fine.
Oh,
But
thank you.
Biden, hell no.
No, I'm not going to vote for
No,
that
I know.
guy. In
Mm-mm.
2020, I voted for the Libertarian nominee, Jo Jorgensen.
It-
She's a great lady.
And I'm mad at
You know.
you, libertarians, the last election. If you'd all vote Republican like you should have, Trump would have won, even though there was a lot of crap going on. If you take the
No,
percentage that voted
you're right.
Republican, he would have won.
That would have
So,
made the difference.
so
Yeah.
y'all and you guys and
Mm.
your just have to vote libertarian because it's, I don't know.
We're
I think
stubborn.
you're stubborn.
We're stubborn.
You shouldn't be so stubborn. My son-in-law, he's a libertarian. I'm like, dude, you're just gonna stop the Republicans from getting in office. You're gonna vote in a Democrat, and that's kind of what he did last time, I think.
Yeah,
In a
unfortunately,
way,
yeah.
yeah.
That's true.
I mean, I'm glad you vote your conscience, but at the same time, you got to think of the country too. I think you know
That's
what I'm saying.
true. I mean, that percentage of voters in the 2020 election who voted third
Yeah,
party
because I looked it up.
or
Because
libertarian.
your conscience voted in Biden. I'm
Ouch.
saying
That
that
means
hurts. I know.
we are responsible for Joe Biden?
Hey, I'm responsible. I'm responsible for Clinton. I voted for Perot twice, so
Oh, good for you.
that's on me too. That's on
Yeah,
me
you
too.
did. And I often say you're smarter than me because if there's one regret that I have in my whole political life, it was voting for Bill Clinton in 1992 instead of Ross Perot because I liked Perot. I really did. And
Yeah,
I fell for that lesser of two evils argument that
me too.
Bush was worse. And so I voted for Clinton and now I regret it.
See, that
and
was the
and
worst.
ah,
To
if I
me,
could just have a
I didn't want to.
do-over.
Yeah, I didn't want to vote for Bush. I liked him, but I think
Yeah.
he was kind of loose and sense of what the job was, and so I wasn't going to vote for him again. I sure wouldn't go for Clinton. So I went with the lesser of two evils, like you did, and that was Perot, and it got Clinton elected.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought Perot was great, and I'm
he
still
was.
kicking myself all these years later
Well,
that I lost that opportunity
the
to
first one, but
change
when he ran
history.
again in 4 more years, he what Sergeant Schreiner as his VP, he
That's
lost
right.
me. He's like, okay, you're way out there now. You're just too out there, and so yeah, I did vote him the first time, so I
And you
did
know,
like
the
him.
media really did, don't you think, Paul, tried to demonize Perot as a crazy
Oh
guy?
yeah,
You
because
know,
he talked really fast, and then, he had that loud voice, and
then you had Dana
yeah,
Carvey playing him on
yeah,
Saturday Night
right, and
Live,
he
and
had that crazy kind of look. I get that, but the guy
yeah,
wasn't a
yeah.
politician. That's like Clinton. He wasn't a politician. He was more about the money and that stuff. So
Mm.
I guess kind of why I voted for him too.
He was slick,
He
slick Willie.
was. Yep.
You know, and he fooled a lot of Democrats, just like, my generation, Gen X. Bill Clinton was our cool Democrat, the guy
The
who played the
sax player,
saxophone
yeah,
with the shades
the cool
and
dude,
maybe he inhaled back in college,
and the cigars and all that
and the
good stuff,
cigars and the ladies
and the blue dress.
yeah, that came later.
Hey, you got to be a cool president to do all that, right? I mean, and that's
But
the way it
yeah,
works.
I guess younger people would relate to that with
Yeah,
Barack Obama, where Obama was the cool guy that came along, the cool Democrat, but both of them were traitorous
to their
pieces.
party.
Yeah, they
Yes,
were traitorous to their country, certainly traitorous, I think, to the ideals of the Democratic Party. And that's why I'm so excited that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has jumped in this race. I think I told you this story, Paul, but I tried to draft Bobby Kennedy to run back in 2007. I wanted him to run in the 2008 election because things were so horrible after 8 years of Bush.
hmm
In 2008, I felt like Bobby Kennedy could save the country. And so I got involved with a draft Kennedy campaign. And I met with Bobby several times during that year, trying to convince him to get in the race. Ultimately, he said no because his kids were still young. He's got 6 children and he had several of them still at home. And considering how he lost his father so tragically to an assassin's bullet in 1968, and he comes from a family of 11 kids, and they all grew up without their dad.
right,
So when he told me he wanted to wait until his kids were grown and then make that decision whether or not to enter politics, I totally respected that. It only made me respect him and like
right.
him more
I mean, I
than I
like the
already
guy. Yeah,
did. I like that he did
I
that.
mean, there's nothing I've seen of him that I dislike. I mean,
Really,
honestly, he's probably a Democrat I would vote for.
I've heard a lot of my MAGA friends say that here
But
lately.
I tell you, we've talked about this. But the dream ticket, Trump and Kennedy. But
Mm.
and you said you don't think a Republican and a Democrat would be on the same ticket, but I don't think it's in the Constitution. I don't know why they wouldn't be
You're
able.
absolutely correct. The
So
Constitution says nothing about political parties, and when you read the Federalist Papers, our founders really warned us against political parties because of stuff like this, that
exactly,
it polarizes the country. They were afraid that it could lead to a civil war,
right,
which it did. And it could happen again, I'm afraid, with this kind of division. And that's why Kennedy's running on a platform. I mean, his slogan is literally heal the divide.
right.
He
I don't
wants
I
to
don't know if
bring
he
the
would.
country
Right.
together.
I mean, I don't know if he would take the VP. I think he might, and I think they're both talking really good about each other. Trump's likes him,
They
he likes Trump,
are.
and
Yeah.
I think it's. And I'm not
How
a
about
political
that?
analyst, but personally, I
Uh-huh.
think Trump's thinking, well, first of all, if I put him up, it makes Biden look stupid. It makes him look worse. I think that's one of them.
Yeah,
And I think this
there's that.
consideration of maybe being on the same ticket might be in the future and maybe they've talked about it. I don't know. They probably haven't, but maybe they're considering it, and maybe that's why they're talking each other up. I don't know. I'm just taking a guess.
That was really surprising to me, Paul. It's interesting how Trump said nothing about Kennedy for like the first 2 months. Kennedy's been in the race since April. And I kept waiting for Trump to come up with a insulting nickname for him or make fun of the way he talks or, like Trump does. But Trump said nothing, not a single word, didn't tweet about him, didn't truth about him, didn't say anything until just this past week. And then Trump, like 3 different times, had high praise for Bobby Kennedy, called him a smart guy. Said they'd been friends for a long time, which is somewhat true, not entirely true,
Right.
because Bobby has sued Trump on several occasions over. This was back in New York City over
Who hasn't sued
developments.
Trump though? Really?
Yeah, it was they were environmental lawsuits.
Right.
Bobby is trying to
Yeah.
clean up the Hudson River there in New York, and he was suing Trump, I believe, over a property that he had that might
Kind
pollute
of
the Hudson.
Ralph Nader type stuff. Yeah, I get it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't think that was anything personal between them. It was just business,
Yeah,
Bobby's
I
in the
mean-
business of suing big developers who
Right.
pollute waterways.
And,
But I
you
think
know,
they
Trump's
settled
used to
that
that.
amicably.
Yeah.
And they've visited many times. He's been down to Mar-a-Lago to visit Trump as a guest, as a friend over the years. So,
Well, he's not a threat to Trump, so why would he? I mean,
yeah.
he only does it to people that are a threat to him. DeSantis, most of the Republicans in race, he's not going to say anything bad. They're not a threat. They're never going to even come close.
Yeah.
So they're not a threat. So it's like, why would I bother?
Right. And he's not
And
running against him as a
He's not
Republican.
running against him, and putting him up will only make him look better against Biden.
Great point.
And
Great
so
point.
I think if he became the Democratic nominee, I think then you would see the insults, but until then, he's not a threat.
That's right.
And I don't understand the
Yeah.
Democrats. If they would put Kennedy up, I will guarantee you they'd win. I guarantee. And why they want to put
Yes.
Biden up, I don't get it. Why are they stuck in that old fart? I don't get it.
You'd think that they
Yeah.
want another. Do the Democrats want Trump back again? Because
I think what they want is a puppet. I think Obama is probably still running the show, or somebody else is.
yeah,
He sure isn't doing it. And I think they like him there because they can control what he does. He doesn't have his own mind. I think he's all about taking money from China, so it doesn't really matter. Politically, he does whatever he thinks is good for his politics. I just think he's not running the show, and I think they like him in there because he isn't running the show.
precisely.
And like Trump, if Kennedy gets in there, he'd be a handful for the Democrats, and I don't think they could handle him. And I think that's why.
And the deep state.
And the deep state.
I mean, the deep state. I swear, Paul, they hate Kennedy more than they hate Trump.
That's why Trump Kennedy would be an awesome ticket.
Yeah.
It really would.
Yeah.
It would be a great ticket.
Now there's a strange bedfellows moment. We got a Trump, the MAGA man and the Kennedy Democrat agree that we would both be happy with a Trump Kennedy unity ticket.
Yeah, and that would
my
give.
question is though, how the heck do we make that happen? If that is assuming that Bobby Kennedy and Trump would consider that. Or
Well, the last time I talked to Trump, no, I'm just kidding. I mean, I don't know.
How do you get it past the party?
I think it's got to be in their minds. It's got to be the party. Screw the
yeah.
party. I mean, first of all, they
Think they ought to
nominate
go independent?
nominate Trump or whoever as the nominee for the party. Or no, I guess they picked the vice president first. But whoever's the nominee, I don't think the vice president really makes that much difference. I don't think they're going to fight it as long as they got the top dog because he's just the vice president.
Right.
But I don't think they would fight it. If they thought they could win the White House, I think they'd be, yeah, let's do this. And I think that would take a lot of people that don't want to vote for Biden, who are Democrats, make them switch just because, well, I don't want to vote for Biden, but I don't want to vote for Trump. So, hey, he's on the ticket. I'll do that.
Yeah, and they wouldn't even have to switch their registration for the general election.
Yep.
If you're talking about a general election fight. I mean, here's the thing. Because of the stupid political party rules in both the Democratic and the Republican Party, they will not allow a unity ticket. They have, you can't have somebody of another party on the ticket, the convention won't nominate
Okay.
them unless,
So let's
like
say,
you suggested, they
right.
change the rules at the convention next year.
Let's
And
say
the Democrats, I think,
mhm.
I think the Democrats have their convention in July, right? And then the
In Chicago, yeah,
Republicans have their convention in August.
I believe
So
so.
Kennedy would have some time, like if he loses the Democratic nomination in
Which he
Chicago,
will. I mean, we
which he
know it.
will, I think we can safely say they're
They
going
won't
to
even
screw
debate
him.
with him, so he will.
Right. I mean, the fix is in.
It's in big
Yeah.
time. And I don't know. I think, and Trump runs the Republican Party. I don't give a crap who you are. If he was a nomination, if he wanted Kennedy to be his VP, I don't think he'd be like, no, screw you. He's going to be my VP. If you don't like it, go to hell. And I think he would tell the Republican Party what to do. I think
He could.
Yeah.
He could.
He's like, if he's not my VP, as I already picked, then he's going to be my VP. What are you going to do about it? Sue me. He'd probably sue them.
That would be delicious.
It wouldn't it? It would be.
Oh, it'd be great. And it's not that hard. I mean, all they'd have to do is just amend the party rules at the convention, so that they
Yeah.
would allow either that or Kennedy would literally have to just switch parties. He'd have to
Which I
become a
don't think that would
Republican.
be a good idea, just because he would lose a lot of Democrats, I think, if he did that.
That's right.
So
That's
that's not
right.
if he went Republican, I don't think it would make a lot of difference. So he needs to
Yeah.
stay a Democrat.
I love the idea of a unity ticket. You know, that's something I think our country needs.
Yeah.
And it's been impossible until now to even have this conversation because of the hatred between Republicans and Democrats. You could never find a Republican and a Democrat who'd get along well
Yeah.
enough or agree on anything
I mean, at
to
first
even
I thought
consider a unity ticket.
a great ticket would have been Trump Tulsi.
Oh,
Democrat
yes.
and a Republican. If that was
Yes.
my dream ticket first,
Mhm.
because she's getting to be anti-Democrat, so they don't like her so much anymore.
Yep.
And
She left.
Kennedy has a history. He's got some good history behind him. He's not conservative, but he's sure not liberal. And
Right.
he's kind of in the middle. I think he makes everybody happy, and I think he'll kind of tone down Bush's rhetoric a little bit. You know, I think the VP that we had, I think he was too mellow, too
Mike
quiet.
Pence?
Yeah, he was too
Yeah.
quiet. He was like, get excited about something, dude. Raise your voice about something. Get mad, get angry or something. He was too mellow. He didn't really get mad about
You
nothing.
know, I thought that's why Trump picked him, because Trump doesn't like anybody competing with him. He didn't want a vice president stealing his thunder or his spotlight. And I wonder sometimes if Kennedy would not be a good match for Trump because, you know, Kennedy can't shut up. He's not going to be that Mike Pence quiet, out of the way vice president. He
Oh, I'm
would be a
sure they'll
very,
I'm sure they'll
very
come to
loud
terms.
vice
Yeah.
president.
I'm sure they'd come to terms like, yeah, I'm your boss. We're going to
Yeah.
talk about this. You're not going to talk about that. You know, and I'm sure they would kind of go over that. And Trump would know that he's only got one more term left.
Mm.
So it doesn't matter if
He could have two.
Kennedy,
If he stays in good health, I mean, constitutionally, he'd be entitled to 2 terms now.
Trump?
Yeah.
I thought you could only serve 2 and that's it.
You can only serve 2 consecutive terms.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Well,
he'd actually be entitled to 2 terms
he'd
if
be
he can win
120,
it.
but
But he'd be
whatever.
old. He'd be really old.
I think he might get tired of the job by then.
Yeah, yeah. But you know, I'm okay with that idea of a vice president. And you know, Kennedy is, I think, 10 years younger than Trump and Biden. So, you know, by the time Trump finished up his 4 years, if Kennedy was his vice president, Kennedy would be what, 73?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not
Well,
too old.
Yeah, we were
And
talking earlier, and like the way they're trying to get Trump in prison. It would be funny if, for some reason, it won't happen, but if for some reason they managed to put him in jail and he still won the election to president. Blow the Democrats' mind. They would lose their ever freaking mind, wouldn't they? They would go nuts.
You
The
know.
people that promised they would leave this time.
Oh yeah.
You know, they would lose it. It would be hilarious.
Suddenly we'd be minting a lot of new Canadians
Yeah.
overnight. Then the crush would be at the northern border of all the Americans like
Yeah.
flooding into Canada trying to get
Well,
out
they're
away
having
from
problems
Trump.
with Canada right now at the border. There's people coming
Yeah,
through
they
Canada
are.
because it's easier to come through Canada and Mexico. So they're not having problems at the north.
Yep.
So both
True
sides.
story.
So the problem they're doing on the south is bleeding in from Canada now.
Yeah.
It's crazy. stupid.
Well, I wanted to ask you about this is supposed to be a debate. We're not supposed to agree on everything,
well, okay.
buddy.
You're wrong.
Yeah, you're
You're
wrong.
dead wrong.
No, you're wrong.
Libertarian, you're wrong. You cost me the vote.
So, of all the stuff that Trump did as president, was there anything that you didn't like? Did he ever let you down?
Well, it's hard to say, but I think the vaccine thing. But he didn't know any better. He was trying to get the vaccine out because he thought it would cure it, it would stop it, and I don't think he knew how bad that vaccine was going to be. I think he rushed it through. I think they should have had more testing, and I think that was one of his biggest mistakes was the vaccine. Even though, ironically, they didn't announce that they were going to release it till after he left.
Mm-hmm.
Till after he, so it's
Yeah.
just after the election.
I
And
guess that turned out to be a blessing for him because
I think so. Hey, it wasn't me.
The
Yeah.
vaccine didn't work out so well. If he was still the president,
Right.
he wouldn't be able to call that a win. And yet,
So now it's
and
on
yet he
Biden.
still does out there on the campaign
Yeah.
trail. He's not backed up off the vaccine. He still says he's proud of Operation Warp Speed, and he
But he-
believes that the vaccine is
right.
safe and effective and has saved many, many, many lives.
But at the same time, he also says it's your choice. Do what you want to do. Where Biden's like, you need to get the shot, or we're going
True.
to fire you. That's it.
Yeah.
Fire you.
Yeah, Trump never would have
no.
mandated it.
He's like, I like, because he was the operator, not the operator, but he was the one that started the shot, and I think he's proud of that. But at the same time, I don't know. It's just a mess. The whole thing is a mess, and I don't think he would ever mandate anything like that.
What did you think of the lockdowns back in March of 2020? That was on his watch.
You look back now, and at the time it seemed real. You look back now, and you're like, oh my God, we let the government do that crap to us. Are you freaking serious? We actually followed what they were telling us to do. You can't catch it at Walmart, but you can catch it at a little mom and pop shop.
That's it.
But at a bar, you can open your bar till 9 and close at 9 because you can't catch it after 9. Stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Dumb.
And we
Just
did it.
dumb.
Like sheep, we followed it. And that just shows how ignorant and how the Americans can just follow you regardless. Don't know any better. And that's why stupid people keep getting elected.
That's right. And I'm not saying that Trump is dumb. He's a very smart man, but this is where Kennedy hits him hard when he does criticize Trump. He mainly, he goes after him on warp speed for rushing the vaccines, but
I think he's right on that though. Yeah.
And I think he's right. And he also goes after Trump on the lockdowns because even though Trump was getting bad advice, and he was putting his trust in the wrong people like Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Oh God, don't bring him up.
And I can look at, I've tried to put myself in Trump's shoes to look at this charitably, because I would not want to be the president during a crisis like that. Yet it's the times of crisis that define a president, that, separate a good president from a bad one. And Trump made the worst decision possible based on the advice of the experts. And he trusted Fauci because in Trump's mind, he's probably thinking, well, this guy's been at NIH since 1984.
Since
probably
1884,
knows what
maybe.
since 1884. He probably knows what he's doing.